الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. تلك آيات الكتاب الحكيم هدى ورحمة للمحسنين الذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم بالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. ومن الناس من يشتري لهو الحديث ليضل عن سبيل الله بغير علم ويتخذها هزؤا أولئك لهم عذاب مهين. وإذا تتلى عليه آياتنا ولى مستكبرا كأن لم يسمعها كأن في أذنيه وقرا فبشره بعذاب أليم. إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم جنات النعيم خالدين فيها وعد الله حقا وهو العزيز الحكيم. خلق السماوات بغير عمد ترونها وألقى في الأرض رواسي أن تميد بكم وبث فيها من كل دابة وأنزلنا من السماء ماء فأنبتنا فيها من كل زوج كريم. هذا خلق الله فأروني ماذا خلق الذين من دونه بل الظالمون في ضلال مبين. ولقد آتينا لقمان الحكمة أن اشكر لله ومن يشكر فإنما يشكر لنفسه ومن كفر فإن الله غني حميد. وإذ قال لقمان لابنه وهو يعظه يا بني لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم. ووصينا الإنسان بوالديه حملته أمه وهنا على وهن وفصاله في عامين أن اشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير. وإن جاهداك على أن تشرك بي ما ليس لك به علم فلا تطعهما وصاحبهما في الدنيا معروفا واتبع سبيل من أناب إلي ثم إلي مرجعكم فأنبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. يا بني إنها إن تك مثقال حبة من خردل فتكن في صخرة أو في السماوات أو في الأرض يأت بها الله إن الله لطيف خبير. يا بني أقم الصلاة وأمر بالمعروف وانه عن المنكر واصبر على ما أصابك إن ذلك من عزم الأمور ولا تصاعر خدك للناس ولا تمشي في الأرض مرحا إن الله لا يحب كل مختال فخور وقصد في مشيك واغضض من صوتك إن أنكر الأصوات لصوت الحمير ألم تروا أن الله سخر لكم ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وأسبغ عليكم نعمه ظاهرة وباطنة ومن الناس من يجادل في الله بغير علم ولا هدى ولا كتاب منير وإذا قيل لهم اتبعوا ما أنزل الله قالوا بل نتبع ما وجدنا عليه آباءنا أولو كان الشيطان يدعوهم إلى عذاب السعير ومن يسلم وجهه إلى الله وهو محسن فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى وإلى الله عاقبة الأمور ومن كفر فلا يحزنك كفره إلينا مرجعهم فننبئهم بما عملوا إن الله عليم بذات الصدور نمتعهم قليلا ثم نضطرهم إلى عذاب غليظ ولئن سألتهم من خلق السماوات والأرض ليقولن الله قل الحمد لله بل أكثرهم لا يعلمون لله ما في السماوات والأرض إن الله هو الغني الحميد ولو أن ما في الأرض من شجرة أقلام والبحر يمده من بعده سبعة أبحر ما نفدت كلمات الله إن الله عزيز حكيم ما خلقكم ولا بعثكم إلا كنفس واحدة إن الله سميع بصير ألم تر أن الله يولج الليل في النهار ويولج النهار في الليل وسخر الشمس والقمر كل يجري إلى أجل مسمى وأن الله بما تعملون خبير ذلك بأن الله هو الحق وأن ما يدعون من دونه الباطل وأن الله هو العلي الكبير ألم تر أن الفلك تجري في البحر بنعمة الله ليريكم من آياته إن في ذلك لآيات لكل صبار شكور وإذا غشيهم موج كالظلل دعوا الله مخلصين له الدين فلما نجاهم إلى البر فمنهم مقتصد وما يجحد بآياتنا إلا كل ختار كفور يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم واخشوا يوما لا يجزي والد عن ولده ولا مولود هو جاز عن والده شيئا إن وعد الله حق فلا تغرنكم الحياة الدنيا ولا يغرنكم بالله الغرور إن الله عنده علم الساعة وينزل الغيث ويعلم ما في الأرحام وما تدري نفس ماذا تكسب غدا وما تدري نفس بأي أرض تموت إن الله عليم خبير.
على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Ali Kirat, here with the Center for Global Muslim Life. Welcome to day 1 of the Global Muslim Spiritual and Social Impact Forum and Awards. We have a wonderful program ahead of us today. Let me take this moment to ask you all to invite your friends and family to the program, inshallah. I would like to begin by mentioning a little bit about the Quran recitation that you heard previously. The reciter was the late Shaykh Nureen Muhammad Sadiq, who passed away recently in November in a car accident. He's a famous Sudanese Qari. The surah that you heard him recite was Surah Luqman in the Quran. The verses that I would like to bring your attention to is verse 27. It reads, "If all the trees on earth were pens and all the seas with 7 more seas besides them were ink, still God's words would not run out. God is almighty and all-wise."
MashaAllah. Thank you, Ali. Thank you for joining us today. It's a blessing to be with you for this forum.
Thank you, Dustin. Alhamdulillah, it's a blessing to be here.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. And we wanted to really highlight those verses in particular with the forum to think about this idea of Allah's creation is rooted in his love for us, his love for humanity. And it's with that love that we see his creation constantly being manifested. And of course, we focus so much on the difficulties of this year, but what we wanted to focus on within this forum is really the beauty that's also been created around the world. And we've created this space, a conference that we've modeled after South by Southwest, a conference that we've modeled after the annual conference in San Francisco, SOCAP, where we're bringing together Muslims creating social and spiritual impact around the world. This is a truly beautiful forum. We have 3 nights of programming with over 25 speakers from around the world. Of course, I'm the founder of the Center for Global Muslim Life, and it's with that idea that we really push this conference forward. And of course, we'd like to thank our sponsors. We couldn't have done this without you. A special shout out to LaunchGood, a special shout out to Gold Studio, and a big shout out to Bayan Islamic Graduate School, who each sponsored a different day of the forum. Alhamdulillah, it's really a beautiful thing. And then we also wanted to quickly draw your attention to the awards that we're giving as well, where we wanted to do this forum, but we also wanted to do it with this awards section where we gave what amounts to awards in 36 categories to over 39 community organizations, 70 businesses, and 130 Muslim community leaders from around the world. And you can still vote for the audience awards. What we did is we awarded all of these, in our opinion, are winners in each category. We didn't, because this conference is really about ecosystem building and about getting our community connected in deeper ways globally. That's what the Center for Global Muslim Life is about. This is our fourth major conference we've had this year, and this is the conference that we want to have annually be our biggest conference. So thank you all for joining us. Tonight, of course, we're going to focus on a couple of awards. The Spiritual Impact Awards of 2020 with Sheikh Mohammed Adeyinka Mendes. We also have Dr. Bilal Ware with us on the third night and Imam Zaid Shakir on the second night. We want to thank all of the winners in each of the categories, the Social Impact Awards, the Spiritual Impact Awards, the Artist of the Year. You all have created so much beauty. We have the Humanitarians of the Year tomorrow night as well. And then tonight we feature a couple of the best Muslim companies of the year. So again, thank you, Ali. Thank you for joining us.
Alhamdulillah. I'm super excited to be here, and let's start the program.
Yeah, so with that, we're going to get into the program, and the first session is with Sheikh Adeyinka Mohammed Mendes. Assalamu alaikum.
We've come from so many places on this earth, but our lives share a common destiny as we walk together. In a time of crisis or in a time of peace, this is a story of 8 billion beating hearts. We share this one fragile planet, the air we breathe, the land we walk on, and the oceans we swim in. Imagine borders that surround us, some more fortified than others. Borders for many of us define our lives today. For global capital and those with the right passports, borders are easy. For the global masses, these borders tell us where we can and cannot go. For the world's 2 billion Muslims, 1 out of every 4 people on this earth, our lives are interconnected by the diaspora of our hearts, of our families, and a spiritual lineage that stretches back 14 centuries. But we are only told stories that put us in boxes to police our identities. What if the full story was told about our faith, about our lives, about our cultures, the story of our love for humanity, and our stories as protectors of the world? This is for the future builders, the dreamers, those who want to escape from the futility of generations past destroying our shared world. Media has been built to divide us. We ask, what if it was built to connect? This is a manifesto written across screens. We need you. Beyond languages, beyond cultures, beyond faiths, beyond all barriers and borders, we need each other. This is for all of us.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessing. This is the Global Muslim Social and Spiritual Impact Forum, and we're super excited to be here with one of our winners for our Spiritual Impact Award, Sheikh Mohammed Adeyinka Mendes, coming to us from the East Coast, I believe. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brother Dustin, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here with us. We wanted to just start by this idea, right? We came up with this award and this forum with the idea that social impact gets so much attention, but social impact for many people, Brother Malcolm as an example, wouldn't happen without the spiritual impact. Like myself, right? Each of us, we had that spark in us that now has led us to a life of work that may be called social impact work, but this idea of spiritual impact and transformation that is possible in each of our lives. Could you just talk about this idea?
Well, first, I want to, again, thank you for having me, and thank you for the award that I'm receiving on behalf of my family and, my teachers, my imams, and so many community members that assisted me and the ministry that I have. The ministry means service. And so, that's really what this is about. There are people that are much more qualified, have done much more work for much longer than I have, that I think would have been more deserving. But to your question, and all praise belongs to Allah. Spiritual impact really is the most important, because the essence of everything is the spirit. That's the ground. That's the center. That's the source. And so our social impact, our political impact, our economic impact has a direct relationship to the strength and to the strength of our spiritual impact upon the people that are in our spheres of influence. And so it shouldn't be underestimated. That's why, you and I were speaking. Malcolm X, Haj Malik Shabazz, may Allah have mercy on him, he emphasized this all the time, and he understood. There was a interview he had with a newspaper called The Militant, and he said that he said the greatest mistake, listen to this, the greatest mistake of the movement has been to fail to awaken the people. And when you awaken the people, they will do what is necessary to change their condition. And the reporter asked, awaken them to their exploitation? And Malcolm said, no, to awaken them to their humanity, to their heritage, and to their worth. And really, that is what the spiritual path is all about.
Yeah, mashallah. And so reflecting on 2020, a year that was filled with so much politics, so much government, malfunction and just disaster. What have you reflected on in this year then, in what this year has meant at a more maybe personal and spiritual level, and also a transformational level?
2020, it's interesting it's called 2020 because 2020 vision is vision that allows you to see normally. And I think that this has been a year for us to gain clearer vision about who we are, about the planet, about our relationships with the planet, our relationships with one another, our relationships with government. I mean, this has been a year of upheaval at every level, social, economic, political, and spiritual upheaval, religious upheaval in so many ways. And I think in that is a great opportunity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God transcendent and exalted, He promises us in the Quran that He will test us with something of fear and hunger and loss of life and decrease in fruits. And Allah gives glad tidings. Give glad tidings to those who are steadfast. And there have been many opportunities, ample opportunities for each and every one of us to show steadfastness, whether that is caring for a loved one who is suffering with a sickness, whether it's COVID-19 or some other sickness, or financially supporting those that are in some economic distress, or raising awareness and raising our voices against the racial injustice that has characterized this country for hundreds of years, and this summer particularly came to a head with the murder of brother George Floyd. The Black Lives, the rekindling of the Black Lives Matter movement has been an incredible moment. I know for my family and for so many of us to again get vision, clearer vision and clarity about what is important and what work we need to be doing in our world.
Yeah, and that's why, of course, we gave you this award, and we wanted to we considered you for this and wanted to talk to you because of the work that you've done online, because of the work that you're doing now with this book that you're translating. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about more about how people have been on the streets, how people deal with these times that we're in, where there may be this sense of isolation, while at the same time there's a group of people who have had great openings in these times, and we know these ayats in the Quran that talks about with hardship comes ease. Many people talked about how this was the best Ramadan of their lives. So could you talk a bit about then, and even talking about protest, how do we spiritually arm ourselves for these times? What are some advice that you can give to people, whether it's adhkar or different things that one can do to have spiritual strength in the midst of so much difficulty and pain?
Well, there's a principle that you'll find in the Quran, and you'll find it if you just contemplate nature. Birth always happens in solitude. Birth always happens in darkness. And spiritual birth, or the birth of a new social movement, the birth of a new social order, begin with solitude. And I think that the pandemic forced so many of us to, even against our will, willingly and unwillingly, as Allah says in so many places in the Quran, to be in solitude and to learn and receive the benefits that come from being alone and or just being with your family. Many of us have gained greater knowledge of ourselves, and through that knowledge have begun or continued a path of healing past trauma. You can't fight on the streets, metaphorically speaking, if you're limping, right? Or if you're disabled, mentally or physically. This is a time for healing. This has been a time where people have been able to reconnect and reacquaint themselves with their family members. I mean, so many of us don't talk to our children or have dinner with our families, and that kind of that's the subtext of what's necessary for any successful movement or campaign. It's made up of families, and so on the street, what we have is tremendous creativity, also tremendous outrage, tremendous hope, and tremendous frustration that so much has not changed over the past over the past few hundred years. So much has not changed since the freedom movement, what's called the civil rights movement of the 60s. And this is a new generation. This is a new generation. I think you raised a really good point. If you're out protesting, if you're out demonstrating, and Islam, the Quran, is very clear. The Prophet Muhammad, Allah bless him and grant him peace, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is very clear about the necessity of enjoining what is good and condemning what is wrong. And he said, if you see something wrong, change it with your hands. And if you can't do that, change it with your tongue. And if you can't do that, then change it with your heart. Now, of course, this should always be done in a way that's within the boundaries, the generous boundaries of the Quran and Sunnah, and within the laws of the land that you live in, and never instigating violence or anarchy and whatnot. So that should be understood in the context of the other injunctions of the Quran. But we must be active. We cannot be silent. And if you're like that, if you're active, or if you're an activist, whether you are an activist with your tongue or with your pen or with your prayers, then you have to constantly refuel. You have to constantly recharge. You need to have spiritual self-care in your life every day. Otherwise, you will burn out. And getting burned is somewhat inevitable in this world. So, we are people that will get burned every now and then, and we will get burned out. And without a spiritual grounding, a spiritual lifeline to the Creator, to Allah, then we don't. There's we can only go for so long before we're depleted of our internal resources. And so I encourage everyone at the very minimum, read the Quran every day. Listen to the Quran, even if it's just a page, even if it's just an ayah. Offer your prayers, your 5 prayers every day. Don't just rush through them. Offer them like you're giving a gift to God. And establish those prayers like you're receiving a gift from God. The prayer is light, and you need that light. You need that light in times of tragedy and trauma. And have a regular practice of meditation, of contemplation, of invocation of God's names, of getting up at night for prayer, night vigil prayers, and you'll see, especially the night vigil prayers. There's, anyone who is, anyone who is active, who's an activist and is not grounded spiritually, they again ultimately deplete their resources. And anyone who thinks they're religious but they are not impacting, I love the name of your organization and this award ceremony, if they're not impacting their social nexus, then their righteousness is just self-serving. It's great personal piety, and inshallah there will be some benefit, but their rank with Allah Ta'ala will only go so high. And this is not me saying this is from the Quran and from the example of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
So the idea then is really that we have to show up as our full selves and through our own worldview of Islam. That if we're going to come to these spaces, that we have to be comfortable with who we are, because the difficulty of Western capitalism, the worldview of Western Christendom, whatever we would call it, Western modernity, is that it is so all-encompassing that it can take over our entire being. I remember there's an incredible book I read about the Cheyenne people where I grew up on the plains of Colorado. And there was a man named C.C. Sa, and they had considered him a prophet. Of course, we would consider him a messenger or someone who brought the message to his people. And he told this story about there'll come a people who will clip their hair. They won't eat our Indian food, and their ways will be so powerful that you'll never be able to look away from them. And if you think of it, especially there's these things that we can't look away from. The television, the Netflix, the things that the constant absorption from a young age of children, even of a worldview that is not their own. And so even in thinking about protest, right, I think of Occupy Oakland and some other spaces I've been in where you have this beautiful diverse city of Oakland, and then you have a protest at the end of it taken over by a small group of white anarchists that have nothing to do with what was done during the day, that had a more holistic vision. And then I also think of the video that I saw, during the George Floyd protests. I believe it was in Brooklyn. It might have been in Minneapolis, but of a young brother who looked like maybe 18, 19 years old, who just in the middle of a crowd of about 1,000 people surrounding him with a bullhorn starts making this incredible dua in English and Arabic, and the entire crowd, and he tells the crowd, just say Ameen. And the entire crowd, 1,000 plus people, Ameen, Ameen, because you show up as our full selves. And that's ultimately what this center is about as well, because it's this idea that we've been put into boxes for too long over the last 20 years of this war on terror, where we have to be American Muslim, we have to be British Muslim, we have to be Singaporean Muslim, or whatever it may be, when we know that our hearts are connected as Muslims around the world. And if we can serve and love each other, we will ultimately serve and love humanity. You're right. So I'm preaching to the choir, but
No, you're right. I'm with you. I love the sermon.
Yeah,
I love the sermon. I love the fact you mentioned the Cheyenne people, the Cheyenne nation, and a big part of my work is working with Native Americans. We had a Muslim Native American gathering / retreat earlier this year, right before the lockdown. Interestingly enough, it was last February, and I think there's a lot that we need to learn from them, and I think there's things that we can also share with our native indigenous family, and that relationship has been very fruitful for me personally. And again, to your point, when we go to these spaces, and we, I urge everyone watching, everyone listening, learn about capitalism, learn about neoliberalism, learn about secularism, because our world is built on these ideologies. We're swimming in them, literally. And Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, Allah be pleased with him, said that Allah teaches us the ways of the righteous in the Quran, but he also teaches us the ways of the corrupt. You have to understand the world that you live in. And when you begin to understand the nature of our environment, and again, I'm including socialism and communism and all the other major philosophies and ideologies and systems that run our world. We need to understand them. And what I think, and what I think is that none of them are completely evil or wrong, but what we have in the Quran, what we have in the example of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is a rubric that enables us to take whatever good there is from any system, any ideology, and reject what is harmful, reject what is evil. But you have to know it, right? You have to know the principles of the Quran, the principles of our usul, our legal theory, and you have to have a connection, a heart connection with the Creator. Cultivate that, and like you said, Dustin, bring your whole self. Don't be ashamed to be Muslim. Don't be ashamed to let your comrades and your companions in whether it's in the corporate world or whether it's in the activist world or in the political world, don't be ashamed to let them know where you stand. They will respect you, and your strength comes from that. And not only that, like you said, mentioned about this young man who I hope I get the blessing of meeting someday. When you show up with your whole self, unapologetically Muslim, then you give permission for others to be their true selves. And they love you and they respect you for that, and you will find brothers and sisters with you.
Yeah, I mean, inshallah, and I think part of our thinking with this idea, like you said, of dealing with working with indigenous communities and seeing the growth of indigenous Muslim, Native American Muslims on these lands. My wife is a Mexican convert, and we've of course done a lot of work here on the borderlands with the border mosque work that we did that we were doing before COVID. And I believe we have to get out of this mentality of being American Muslims and looking at Islam in the Americas. And I know you've thought about this a lot as well. So visiting people like Sheikh Zo in Haiti, and really because Islam in the Americas is growing in some ways faster than it's growing in almost any other part of the world, Islam in Spanish in particular. What are your reflections on how we think about Islam in the Americas? And also if you could tell us a bit about your interaction with someone like Sheikh Zo in Haiti as an example.
Well, Islam in America is the future, and I mean we cannot afford to limit ourselves to the United States or to Canada. Our family, our brothers and sisters in South America and Central America and the Caribbean are what I've found in my life, they are much closer to a natural, sacred, simple way of living that preserves the fitrah, that preserves our primordial innocence and nature, our primordial orientation towards divine guidance, then our lifestyles here in the United States, except for, a few people, a few communities like the Amish and the Mennonites and some of the Native American communities and a few intentional communities that are, in very deliberately living sacred, simple, natural lives. And, Mujahid Fletcher has just done incredible work with Islam in Spanish over the past 10 plus years. And the work that you're doing with the border mosque is indicative of the opportunity. Again, as I mentioned with the work that I've been doing with our indigenous American family, we have a lot to learn from these communities. And not only that, they are really waiting, in a sense, waiting for, with their hands out to join with like-minded, like-spirited people, regardless of their religion. Black Elk, I encourage everyone to read the book Black Elk Speaks. Black Elk talked about a vision. He was a great Native American a spiritual leader, and he said he had a vision of the circle, of the hoop, right, the big hoop of humanity that encompass all of the nations, the four nations, meaning all of human beings. That is the raison d'être of this land, the Americas. And this is one thing I learned from Sheikh Ahmed Zo Abdullah from Haiti, is that the purpose of the United States is to be a meeting place. The purpose, not of the United States, the purpose of the Americas, is to be a meeting place for all of humanity, so that we can become one spiritually, so that our hearts, those of us who are believers, our hearts can connect and unify. And from that comes a new being, a new consciousness that serves the rest of the world and serves the cosmos. And thank you for mentioning Sheikh Zo. He is a professor in Haiti who's also a spiritual teacher, and so much of the work that I do is inspired by him. From the time I embraced Islam, my first teacher was Sheikh Muhammad Sharif, the founder of the Sankore Institute of Islamic African Studies. I was always oriented to understand that Islam has a very rich Black presence. And when I say Islam, I'm talking about from the beginning of time, not just 1400 plus years ago, but there's always been a very visible, vocal, pivotal Black presence before Prophet Muhammad, Allah bless him and grant him peace, and during Prophet Muhammad's life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and after his life. And so, the research, the manuscripts that document that presence have always been a big part of my teaching and the lectures that I do and the courses and classes that I teach. And Sheikh Muhammad Sharif, I really give him credit for doing that. But with Sheikh Zo, he took things to a whole nother level with understanding the spiritual mission of this people, and how each people, whether they are white Americans or whether they are Native Americans or whether they're African Americans or Chinese or the Spanish or Senegalese or Malay, each people has a spiritual mission. And when we are each in our missions, when we are each committed to spiritual impact in this plane, on this planet, our collective efforts synergize, our collective efforts synchronize, and it brings about a power that no secular order can withstand.
Mhm.
And so this is, this is critical for us to understand. We have to have spiritual vigor and academic rigor in everything that we're doing, inshallah ta'ala. And I think that more and more people are awakening to this, that I'm not an island. I am not superior because I am a citizen of the United States. My brother in Venezuela, my brother or my sister in Puerto Rico, my brother or sister in Haiti is equal with me in what they can offer and what they have been given. Like Rumi, like the great Muslim mystical scholar and poet, said, every human being has an ocean within them. And so our recognition of people and our valuing of people is not because of what kind of passport they have, not because it's not based on their immigration status. We respect, no, we revere. What I learned from one of the things I learned from Sheikh Zo and from the indigenous brothers and sisters that I work with, we revere every human being, like Rumi said, because of the ocean that is within them, the ocean of knowledge and the ocean of love that is their potential and their birthright. But there's a certain lifestyle that we need to live to access that. And that's really, what this is all about.
MashaAllah, thank you for that. And then to close with that idea, we know that when we came on the call, you were talking about fulfilling your own mission and living into your own mission. And so we know you're working on this really important book, and you said you were up most of the night. MashaAllah, may Allah give you tawfiq and continued blessing in writing it. And you said you hope that it comes out very soon. So could you give us an update on the book and talk to the people about what you're doing? And we really look forward to reading it, inshallah.
Yeah, well, thank you for the plug. I was reading an article in the New York Times about President Obama's latest book, and one of the things he said is the best time to write is between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. Right, and I found that to be the case. And one of my teachers, Imam Fode Drame, he writes through the night, and so yeah, I have lots of children, and during the day they're in school and they have needs, and they're and I want to be present with them. And then there's the community as well, and serving people in the community. So the nighttime is the right time. RIGHT and WRITE. Right, nighttime is the right time. So this book is incredible. It is by the great scholar. He was a polymath, Imam Jalaluddin as-Suyuti. He lived about 500 years ago. Passed away in 1505, and it's called Raf Sha'n al-Hubshan, which literally means manifesting the eminence of the Abyssinians. But al-Hubshan here doesn't just mean Abyssinians or who we know today as Ethiopians. It refers to blacks in general, because he mentions Nubians in it, he mentions Ethiopians, he mentions Zanj, and other African peoples, and he mentions Arabs who are black, like Mihja, may Allah be pleased with him, one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, who was the first person to be martyred at Badr, who wasn't from Africa, but he was an Arab, he was an Ansar, he was an Arab, and so this book, Imam Suyuti, he wasn't black, right? He wasn't from Africa. His father was Persian, his mother was Circassian from Eastern Europe. But he saw that this topic needed to be addressed. The eminence of the blacks, the value of the blacks, the importance of the blacks, the greatness of the blacks. And he's kind of dovetailing. His work is a supplement, you could say, or a completion to another work in the same genre, written by the great Imam, another polymath, Abdurrahman Ibn al-Jawzi, who wrote a book called Tanwir al-Ghabash, في فضل السودان والحبش, the illumination of the darkness regarding the blacks and the Ethiopians. And again, it's a book about the same topic. So it deals with great black Muslim luminaries before the time of Prophet Muhammad, during his lifetime and afterwards, who were prophets, who were rulers, who were poets, who were comedians, who were saints, who were scholars, who were warriors. It also deals with some of the prophets that were black. It deals with some of the words in the Quran that are in accordance with the ancient Ethiopic language. That there are words in the Quran that are concordant with ancient Ethiopian words. That might be news to a lot of people, right? He also talks about the geography and the history of Greater Abyssinia, right, which wasn't just the country of Ethiopia that we know today, but for many people, it was the lands of the blacks, right? Ancient Egypt, Kemet and Nubia, and going all the way west and into the southern regions towards South Africa as well. All of that was seen in antiquity as part of Abyssinia or Ethiopia. In the book, I could talk for hours about this book. It's coming out this Black History Month, this coming Black History Month, inshallah, God willing, February 2021. I've been working on it with my dear brother, Ustad Talut Dawood, Celebrate Mercy, helped do fundraising for it, crowdfunding, and I thank everyone who's donated. The Imam Ghazali Institute has been incredibly supportive with editing and proofreading, and and so it's a team of people have come together, and I really think this book is going to be a game changer. There are books like it that are already out there, by Imam Dawood Walid, for example, Centering Black Narrative, Habib Akande, Illuminating the Darkness. But I think there's something that this book is going to add to the conversation, and we need to learn about each other. There's something, sadly, and I'll end with this. I don't want to be too long-winded. Ibn al-Jawzi, he writes in his introduction to his book that, again, the book that we're translating is a completion of. He says that a group of Africans, a group of Ethiopians, noble Ethiopians, came to me and they were dejected about the color of their skin. And so I wrote this book to let them know that your excellence, that your excellence is not based on skin color, right? We don't judge people based on the color, their complexion, but your excellence is based on your character and your knowledge and your virtues and your reverence, your taqwa for God. And so then he goes into this amazing, the text is amazing. And so I ask you for your prayers, Dustin, and everyone who's listening and watching. We're really hoping to actually launch a course in tandem with the book launch this coming February 2021, God willing, inshallah, and to have other scholars and artists that will speak to these issues. We need healing. For about 1,000+ years in our ummah, we've had negative portrayals of Black people in Islam. And I know we like to say there's no racism in Islam, and that is true. There is no racism in Islam, but we have some Muslims that are racist. And there's a difference between Islam as a faith and the people that practice it. And there are some Muslims that have said and written racist books, and there are others who have made Black Muslims invisible in our Islamic textbooks, in our movies, our documentaries, our adhan clocks, right? I have an adhan clock with 2,000, with a whole bunch of adhans from around the world. Not one has an adhan from West or East Africa, right? So there's, like Dr. Bilal Ware, who's another awardee. He recently had a course that I was blessed to teach on called Invisible Muslims. Like, we have been the invisible Muslims in the room for hundreds and hundreds of years. And hopefully this book and others like it, and the courses, and hopefully the movies and the animation and the poetry and the songs that come out of this will help to change that, so that all Muslims, right, not just Black Muslims, but all Muslims and their contributions can be recognized, alhamdulillah, and we can benefit from them.
No, and may Allah bless you in your work and give you, like I said, tawfiq in completing it. And I think that work, it's so foundational, it's so important. And again, it's part of the reason why we started this center, where the majority of the world's Muslims, almost 70%, are in Asia and Africa. And for those of us who've been blessed to spend time in Africa, myself in West Africa, know that it's true, this statement, that Africa is the land of the awliya, those people who know Allah, and even amongst the non-Muslims, that they're the people with the most upright character, that they're the happiest people you'd ever meet in your life within these places. And of course, we don't want to generalize, but it's such a blessed, beautiful place. And I think this work is changing narratives and it's transforming hearts. And so may Allah bless you in it. And we thank you for your time, my brother. And inshallah, we'll see you again.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Alaikum salam.
Hope that truth will prevail. Even Allah says in the Quran, no matter what happens, falsehood, oppression, injustice, no matter what happens, one day will be gone and truth will prevail. I pray those who are facing injustice, whether it's in the United States of America or around the world, whether it's in Hong Kong, whether it's in Syria, whether it's in India, no matter where it is, whether it's Australia, no matter what's going on in Palestine. May Allah make us victorious. Ameen. May Allah make us victorious. Ameen. Everybody just say Ameen. Ameen. I don't care what your village do, just say Ameen. 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 It just means we say united our people will never be defeated. Let's all say Ameen. We pray that Allah delivers us justice. Ameen. We pray that Allah delivers us justice. Ameen. We pray that Allah takes care of the oppressors. Ameen. We pray that whoever wakes up with a negative intention towards human beings, Allah deals with that person. Ameen. We pray that those in power who are misusing their power, may Allah remove them from power. Ameen. May Allah replace them with people who will make good use of this power. Ameen. We pray that Allah will make things easy for us. Ameen. We pray that we will see the fruits of the hard work we are putting in right now. Ameen. Even if it means after our death. One day, our grandchildren will be able to hold hands and see the police and not be afraid.
Ameen, Ya Rabbil Alameen. That was the beautiful dua of the brother from Brooklyn that Sheikh Mohammed and myself were talking about in his short talk. Thank you again, Sheikh Mohammed. Next, we're going to turn to the best global Muslim companies of the year. The idea of this forum is to look at the different layers in which Muslims are making social and spiritual impact around the world. So the best Muslim companies of the year are, number one, right, that's in no particular order, these are actually in alphabetical order, Fashion Valet in Malaysia, amazing company that really did a lot, went above and beyond this year, and we're going to talk to their founders in just a minute. Hot Hijab, one of the fastest growing modest fashion companies in the world, based in New York, who we'll talk to we'll talk to Melanie on day number 2. Noor Kids added 40,000 members to their platform this year as they help families around the world get through the lockdown and having their children at homes. They're also now producing their own television show. Wahid Invest, doing really incredible work as one of the largest Muslim fintech platforms in the world. Warda Books, the best English language Islamic bookstore in the world that also is curating content in a way that we can consume their blogs and reviews around the world. We're talking to their founders on their founder on day number 3. And of course, Yaqeen Institute, founded by Imam Omar Suleiman. So next we go to a short interview that I did with Amany Killawi from LaunchGood, who was also named this year to Inc. magazine's top female founders. And so we're super excited for this conversation. And here is Amany. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good to see you, Dustin.
Good to see you as well, Amany. So I'm here with Amany from LaunchGood. We're super excited to award you all as one of the best global Muslim companies of 2020 for our social and spiritual impact forum. And of course, you all are also a sponsor. You had won the award before you were decided to be a sponsor, so we wanted to make that clear to everyone. But I think over the last 5 years, when I started my first publication on Wide way back in 2014, 2015, you guys were launching as well. And I remember you were on our list of top global Muslim startups, and How Hijab was on it, Noor Kids was on it, you guys were in it, and now here we are 5-6 years later, and now you guys are nearing nearly $200 million raised on the LaunchGood platform, I believe. So yeah, just talk to me about what that journey has been like over the last 5 years for you all, and how and where you're at now.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I mean, we're honored to accept the award. And it's been an incredible 5 years. I think those who are in it know how hard it is to actually build a company from scratch and to do it in a space in the digital Islamic economy. It's been an incredible journey on so many fronts. It took so much time to kind of get to the point we are now. And much of the growth that people see is like a culmination of 7 years of work. So the last 2 years have been kind of the biggest factor for us in terms of growth. But alhamdulillah, overall, I think the best part is becoming a place that is a viable career option for many people, right? Whereas if they were going to go to Google or going to go to, more traditional route or a consulting firm or whatever it is, LaunchGood now becomes an option for them that's a viable career option that combines deen and dunya. And for me, that's one of the biggest accomplishments for us is to know that we've come to that point.
Yeah, so talk about your team now. I know, mashallah, where all are you located? And it's fascinating to me that you all were pretty distributed before COVID even happened, right? And so what's that like, building a truly global Muslim company and building it with people, not everyone on your team, I imagine, is Muslim. So talk a bit about that.
Right. So we have a team of over 50 people in 5 countries. And you're right, Dustin, we were remote before COVID was even a factor for us. And that sort of just happened organically. We started out with 3 co-founders, myself, my co-founder, Chris, and my second co-founder, Amar. Amar was already in a different city. And naturally, as we grew, it was digital. Everything we did was 100% digital. And so you just needed a good connection and a good laptop, and you're able to really participate in helping build LaunchGood. And so it just grew over time, where we discovered that there's incredible talent across the world, and they don't have to actually be in the same vicinity as us. And that's just kind of expanded to now a team in 5 countries.
MashaAllah. And so this year, there are a couple of recognitions. One, you were recognized as one of the top female founders by Inc. magazine. So talk about what that recognition meant to you, and also talk about some of the other Muslim female founders who may not get the recognition they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it definitely was very validating. I didn't realize it was that big of a deal till it actually went out. And sometimes you're in it and you just kind of like, you're every day for you just feels kind of ordinary. But when you look at the grand scheme of things, it was an extraordinary achievement in the sense that I think the biggest factor for people was just seeing a Muslim woman, or a visibly covered Muslim woman, on the front of Inc. magazine and on their homepage. And I think for many people, being able to see someone who looks like you in a place that, in your head you may not have felt was possible, was probably the most transformative aspect of it all. And I was talking to many friends growing up. For me, we didn't have many of the role models that you see today. And so I used to kind of create this like poster board where I would print out pictures of Muslim women that I was inspired by, and I would kind of stare at that every day and internalize it. And now you don't have to do that in the same way, because there's so many incredible examples of Muslim women doing amazing work, whether it's the Olympics or Congress or Muslim companies. Inshallah, those are examples for people to follow.
Yeah, totally. And then the other big milestone is that I think you hit 100 million this year, and then you should hit, it looks like 200 million before Ramadan, right? So talk about what that has meant for you. So that means 6 years to get to 100 million, right? And then maybe less than a year to raise the next 100 million. So what are your goals in terms of the platform size and the types of how big do you want this thing to get?
Absolutely. So our goal is to get to 1 billion funds raised annually, inshallah. That's the next milestone for us. And I mean, the way we're growing 100% on average. So it's just, it becomes this cumulative, right? In the sense that if we do 100 this year, we'll do 200 next year, 400 the year after. And that's because we got to a tipping point, right? As I mentioned, like we've been building LaunchGood for 7 years. And even before the sort of first day we had LaunchGood.com, there was a 2-year inception process. So you can say the journey is actually longer than 7 years. But the goal, inshallah, is to get to 1 billion raised annually on LaunchGood. That would put us at the likes of GoFundMe and others.
MashaAllah, that would be amazing. And then, you know what I love about these awards that we did this year. I mean, you guys could do a LaunchGood version of this as well very easily, right? And I think that there's a way that, inshallah, maybe in the future we can incorporate some of that more. But talk about some of the way in which you see the platform creating this social and spiritual impact, and how, you know, maybe talk about some of your favorite campaigns from the last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, as you mentioned, being a platform, there's so much that we could help amplify. And our goal really with LaunchGood is to continue to build that ecosystem for the global Muslim community. And some of my favorite campaigns have been kind of that seed funding that launched that next effort. So whether it was a halal automatic stock finder for people to invest Islamically and ethically, or a Hajj backpack, or even organizations like Muhsin, who started their seed funding on LaunchGood and now have become an incredible organization focused on accessibility in the Muslim community. So for me, those are my personal favorite campaigns, those campaigns that needed that seed funding to get started, and that we helped them do that. And then we really see them flourish within the Muslim community and hopefully become models for others as well.
So in that way, I mean, it's almost like you guys are a startup hub, right? Where people are coming to you for incubation. And it's interesting to think about too, right? Is what's the difference between like Indiegogo, GoFundMe, right? These other platforms that are maybe, I'd say GoFundMe is like super reactionary, right? It's like people go there for medical expenses, people go there in emergencies. Like Indiegogo is fairly artistic. What's the other big one that I'm?
Kickstarter.
Yeah, Kickstarter. Also, Kickstarter's super creative, right? And they actually curate it, and they don't allow tech products basically on that platform at all, because they were starting to take it over. So each one is kind of curated, and it's fascinating now that you could reach a level where you're equaling that. But where do you talking a bit about the types, what are campaigns that are successful, and do you have like a majority of types of campaigns? Like, for instance, what percentage of campaigns on the platform are startups, right? Are people like looking for seed funding for either a company or a project?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So I would say the vast majority, or 70%, are charitable or cause-based, and the other 30% are a mix of startup venture, a product, or just an initiative that's not necessarily focused on humanitarian aid or a specific relief campaign. And it's interesting, when we first started LaunchGood, we wanted to just be the Kickstarter for the Muslim community. So we wanted to be focused just on creative and entrepreneurial projects. But as we grew, we realized we actually had to be inclusive of the charitable factor, because that was something that was still very close to home. Over the last few years, we've seen that resurgence of more entrepreneurial, more product-based campaigns. And one of the things that we're even kind of thinking about is potentially having like a sub-brand, like a LaunchGood Kickstarter sub-brand, so that people can see both. I often hear people say, well, I want to support this and this. And I tell people it's not either or, it's and, right? All of these projects deserve to be supported in our community, and they all are really kind of tackling various issues and challenges. And so this idea of sort of a sub-brand would be a cool way to amplify both versus expecting people to kind of discover some of that on their own.
Yeah, and I mean now you also have equity crowdfunding that's opened up in the U.S. and in the U.K. and other parts of the world, and then even I think social impact funds are something that the Muslim community, I haven't seen a lot of. Like there was a fund here where I live in San Diego that was a $1 million fund that was raised on GoFundMe, because I think GoFundMe is actually based in San Diego, and it was just focused on women and women of color and refugees, and it was $1 million, and it was Sharia compliant. Right. And so like that's something we're interested in as well, is like, you know, what are the next phases in funds, right? And in raising money and in equity based funding. Is that something you all have thought about?
Yeah, I mean, we've thought of equity crowdfunding, but it's not necessarily a space that we're going to jump into anytime soon. And it's quite challenging because even in the US, each state has their own rules and regulations with the Jobs Act about what you can and can't do and who's an accredited investor. Plus, you add the global component to it as well in terms of can you kind of have the same model, let's say in Europe or Malaysia or Singapore. And so it's not a space we're interested in, but we're definitely watching and kind of exploring if need be. And I think it's an interesting space in itself because right now, currently, donation and rewards crowdfunding is still the largest, but equity is definitely expanding to become one of the potential biggest parts of the crowdfunding industry.
Yeah, awesome. And changing gears a little bit, you know, I want to go back to a bit of your journey, because that's all of this is where LaunchGood is at. But the idea of this forum is to talk about the connection between social and spiritual impact. So talk about, you know, the moment or the spark of that spiritual moment that led you to seek building a project like this for the Muslim community. If you have one moment that you can point to.
Yeah, I'm thinking about. So for me, my background was in social work, and I was an organizer before I was doing LaunchGood, and I was doing a lot of work in the Muslim community, non-Muslim community, and I was one of the few Muslims in crowdfunding 10 years ago. So, you know, this was back when I was like 17, 19. I had crowdfunded for the first time, and I remember meeting my co-founders around this time. And we started working on LaunchGood for some time on a part-time basis. But the moment where I decided to go full-time was about a year journey of praying istikhara. And I often tell people istikhara feels like a sandstorm in your heart. Once it settles, you just know this is what you need to do. And for me, it was this idea of the concept of LaunchGood, although it was, all we had was a WordPress site at the time. So it's not what you see today, right? But the concept of having a platform that could just help us tell our stories and also literally and practically help secure seed funding for ideas and projects was just so transformative and just so refreshing to hear and see, because I think we sort of suffer from a lack of inspiration. And the idea was that LaunchGood could serve as that inspiration to help us really cultivate some of the amazing projects and ideas that we've been wanting to do for some time for ourselves, for our community, and for the world.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't know you have a community organizing background. Of course, that's my background as well. And I think it's part of the way that I know it's part of the reason why I think the way that I think. And a lot of and another reason why we wanted to do this conference is also about ecosystem building. And I think LaunchGood is the example of you all have such an incredible ecosystem. I think one of the problems is maybe some of the companies and people on the platform don't interact enough. So what have you thought about in terms of like ecosystem building? How would you encourage founders and organizations and institutions to work together to really build a stronger ecosystem of Muslim organizations?
It's a great question. And I often tell people that, first of all, it's not enough to just build a Muslim version of something. You have to build a better product, number one. And then number two, when you do that, is being able to be of service to others in that same space. Like we're only stronger, we only can create a larger economy if we all kind of invest into that together. It's kind of how certain cities or certain restaurants in a city all kind of pair together, because more people coming to that town means everybody benefits and everybody eats out in that city or in that town. It's not that restaurant versus my restaurant. So I think that's the first thing, is the mindset there that has to be in place. But then in terms of practically, how do we create more community, or how do we build better community online? I think it's certainly something that we've been thinking about. I mean, we do it now informally. So when we talk to certain campaigns or support people who say, hey, you should try this, or we know this person that's built a similar app to you around Islamophobia in Australia, so you guys should talk. Or you're building an app around Islamophobia in Canada. These guys have done it in Australia. Let's connect you. But then there's more active ways that we've been thinking about in terms of kind of connecting the dots of our ecosystem and putting people in touch. And I think part of that is building more of like a community manager element on LaunchGood to really help the different campaigns thrive within that ecosystem and just learn from each other's mistakes. So we've brainstormed conferences that we could run in a digital fashion. We've brainstormed lessons learned about building a remote company that other Islamic companies in the space can learn from. So there's a couple ideas we're toying around with, but ideally it would be something along the lines of like either a physical or digital coming together and just a sharing of ideas, both of what we've done. We're very transparent, almost to a fault, in terms of how we do things, but at least offering that to our community to see if that could be of benefit.
No, I mean, I really encourage you to do that because I think there'd be so much learning from what you've done over the last 5-6 years. Maybe there's a collective book that could come out of it or something that could be unique because we've been running this Digital Media Academy now for the last like 4 or 5 months, and we've had almost 100 students on there. And it was interesting. Like I wanted to teach people how to create video, how to do live streams, how to create digital strategy. But it ended up being the main question was around business development and then crowdfunding. And so I wanted to ask you like advice for that for students and people that are starting on business development and then what type of campaigns do you work? Because the difficulty is you put up a campaign to launch like your company, it might not you might not get a good reaction. Whereas if you put up a product or you actually have a physical product that you can do pre-sales with, maybe that would work better. So if you could just go through, for people, what you think works best.
Yeah, definitely. And you hit the nail on the head. People want to support a product. They want to support something tangible. Crowdfunding is about tangible elements or tangible products, whether it's feeding someone or an actual book that you take home. And so we often tell people what's cool about crowdfunding. If you have an idea or you're looking to launch a company, whatever company it might be, certain things work with crowdfunding and certain things don't. Like starting a consulting company via crowdfunding doesn't work. But if you are looking to sell like halal Slim Jims, for example, or you're looking to launch a series of children's books, or you're looking to launch an app, crowdfunding is a great way to take that idea straight to the community and validate if they want it or not, right? And if you're addressing a specific pain point. And so you often want to start with that concept first, the product in itself, and use crowdfunding as a way to get that seed funding or that first initial cash to make it happen. And certain ideas like publishing is expensive upfront capital, and so crowdfunding makes sense first to do that before you go and spend it yourself, to just see if there's an appetite for it or not. And a couple of good examples of this. I mean, I remember I worked with Sister Megan Wyatt way back in the first 2000 campaigns of LaunchGood. I coached them personally, myself and Chris. But she had a how to get hijab ready book. And it was a really cool idea. It was like the American style or the American girl style concept, but how to kind of teach girls if they decide that they'd like to wear hijab, how to do it and how to do it in a way that is sort of friendly and digestible. And she had crowdfunded $20,000 at the time of pre-sale. And then that validated the idea for her, and she went to a publisher and she made that book happen. And there's countless examples of that. But the best way, if people aren't sure, is they can just go to launchgood.com/consulting and they can speak to anyone from our team. We can share some case studies and just help you sort of map out and see if your idea is a good fit for crowdfunding or it's not. Oftentimes people think crowdfunding is the business model and it's just part of it. And it's something I like to kind of clarify, that it's one element of your marketing and your business model, but it's not all of it.
Right, because there's two real situations that people could be in, right? And in the course, we talk about building your MVP or building your minimal viable product, and then validating it with the data. And crowdfunding is an example of you're getting data feedback literally by whether or not people are giving to your campaign, and based on the metrics of how people are reacting to your video or anything like that. But the one is that you are starting with basically nothing, and maybe you have an email list that you've shabbily put together based on your contacts in your
You got to
Gmail
build
or
your
something
network.
like that.
Yeah.
Or you have the example of Noor Kids, right, that recently did an amazing campaign on LaunchGood where they had already cultivated a community. They already have a great email list. They have members, people who are already paying membership fees to get the books from them. And then they announced that they're doing a television
project.
series, right? And so talk about that campaign and the type of response. And because I thought that was probably, that's one of the best campaigns I've seen on LaunchGood ever in terms of the instant response.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So that you get two cases, like you mentioned, and there's the case of like initial seed funding to just launch an idea, right? Or you can be more established, or you have a product and you're looking to get feedback on a new product, and so you tap into your existing crowd, right? And I often tell people that the crowd comes before the funds, right? So when you're launching something for the first time, if you don't have if you don't have a email listserv, your crowd is inherently your friends and family. Like that's your inherent crowd. It's your friends and friends of those friends to make it happen. And so either or works. Most importantly, in both cases, you're validating an idea. And New York is a good example in terms of just, like you said, they're able to tap into an existing crowd that they have. And then not only that, but build something that's relevant to them and use crowdfunding as a way to kind of create excitement and buzz and sort of FOMO in terms of what could happen, or launch new products. And in this case, inshallah, a TV series.
Yeah, so finishing out then. So what's I know you talked about the $1 billion mark, and so you're saying that's about maybe 3-4 years out, probably. May Allah continue to give you much tawfiq and success as you head to that. But what's next, and what's coming up this year for LaunchGood that you can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we are just kind of, we're winding up to wind down, as we say. We're wrapping up the year, and we're just getting ready for Ramadan to make sure that we as a platform are ready to support the Muslim community. And, you know, we had something similar this year with COVID, where we had a specific initiative around COVID, where we made sure our team was available, we reduced fees, we made sure that everybody has what they need. We're potentially... There's a couple of projects in the works. I don't know if I have the green light to announce them publicly, but definitely gearing up for Ramadan and potentially releasing some really cool product enhancements for some of our core, CCs and campaign creators. So mostly making sure that LaunchGood is even better and greater, inshallah, for people getting ready to fundraise in Ramadan.
Inshallah, yeah, we're excited, and so get your Ramadan 2021 campaigns ready now. LaunchGood is ready to support you. Yeah, and so thank you again for supporting the Global Muslim Social and Spiritual Impact Forum, to LaunchGood. You know, we couldn't do this program without our sponsors, and just thank you for all the inspiration that you all have given us over the years. And like I said, we pray for your continued success, inshallah.
And thank you so much. We're honored again.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Assalamu alaikum.
I'm Peter Gould, and I'm the Chief Design Officer at Gould Studio.
Hi, my name is Amr Hamid. I'm the CDO and co-founder of LaunchGood.
A great partnership starts with really strong alignment of vision, of values, and in this case, we like to think of this partnership as being like-hearted.
One of the beauties of the collaboration between LaunchGood and Gould Studio is the ability to work with a team that understands the market, understands the craft, and is able to work together towards really clear and exciting goals. LaunchGood is not just about the crowdfunding. At our core, it's really about reinstilling a confidence in the global Muslim community.
One of the most beautiful things about being able to work with a brand and a platform like LaunchGood is seeing directly the empowering effect that it has on individuals and communities and families.
And we do this through trying to build products and experiences that help people feel this global heartbeat and understand that we're connected today more than ever before. So as long as we continue working towards that goal and helping people activate that global connection for good, then this is how we know that we're heading towards the right track when it comes to building product.
We've seen when people come together as a crowd and support one another just selflessly in kindness, that's a really powerful thing to help design for.
So some of the really exciting things that came out of this collaboration was the ability to do really a deep dive on some of the most exciting times of the year for the global Muslim community. This includes Ramadan, Dhul Hijjah.
These seasonal events are really at the peak of demand for LaunchGood's platform. What our team needs to be able to do is, starting many months earlier, to help design and deliver the best possible experience for the users that are coming on board. And we're talking thousands and thousands of people that start hitting the platform. We need to make sure that the design's smooth, it's enjoyable, it looks beautiful, but it's well crafted and everything kind of works. The partnership with LaunchGood has been an incredible opportunity to let our two teams practice heart-centered design. So really thinking the role of design in a more meaningful way, at how we can really think about not just empowering communities and delivering a great experience on the platform, but how can we really try to connect hearts? How can we look after someone's personal or spiritual well-being? Can design play a role in that? I think it can, and I think at Gould Studio, we're aspiring to do just that.
So when it comes to design, design is so much more than the aesthetic. It's really about the functionality. It's really about how people are engaging and using your product. This collaboration with Gould Studio has been able to help uncover the potentials and opportunities within these products. So we're super excited to see what the next steps are to continue building on the momentum that's already been built.
So I really appreciate the opportunity so much. It's been a great partnership, and I feel like there's an incredible future ahead with our two teams working together.
Just keep your eyes out, because LaunchGood and Gould Studio, I think, are going places.
Thank you again to LaunchGood and to Gould Studios for sponsoring this event. We couldn't have done this without you. And next, we turn to Malaysia and Fashion Valet, an incredible story of this husband and wife team that actually launched their company on a television pitch show in Malaysia in 2012. And then they built one of the largest modest fashion platforms in the world, where they actually built out retail. And then in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, they even used their technology that they have from their e-commerce expertise to build out a platform for local vendors who are street food vendors, to help them be able to sell their food online and deliver to people so that they could make some income in the middle of the lockdown. Thank you so much to Vivy, Yusof, and to Fadza Anuar for joining us today.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. I'm Fadza and this is Vivy. We're from Fashion Valet. Thank you so much for awarding us this very prestigious award. It's been a very challenging year for all of us in the world, and I think for us particularly in Fashion Valet, we realized very early on in the year that we were going to be one of the few companies that are a bit more fortunate than most. And so we felt very early on that it was our responsibility to help others around us.
Yeah, the first thing we did was we created a platform for vendors who sell F&B to sell on our platform. And it's very unheard of that a fashion platform is selling food. And the first day alone, we got about 5,000 vendors on our website, and we let them sell for free. So it was literally free exposure for everyone, and we just wanted to help with the traffic that we were getting. On top of that, we also did a fundraising with Imaret, an NGO, to buy medical supplies for frontliners, and that was amazing because in the first 3 months alone, we managed to raise over 2 million ringgit. It was really something I'll never forget.
Even during this time, that's our kids. I mean, this is the new normal, guys. So even for us, we're hoping for a much better year ahead for our business. We've been hit especially hard in our retail stores, especially with the lockdowns and the new SOPs that we have to follow. But we're still committed to building more stores next year because we want to build a great brand experience for our customers. We'll ensure that these stores are, exuding the brand that we represent, and while at the same time making sure that all the SOPs are covered so that we make sure that our customers our customers are always kept in priority.
We're so sorry, guys, but we're keeping it real. But anyway, okay, on a more serious note, I think we're very proud of the brands that we've built. Over the last decade, we spent the last decade helping to build other brands. And this decade, moving forward, we're proud to build our own brands to hopefully go global. So one of the brands that we're really proud of is Duck. I hope you've heard of it. Duck is a brand that wants to empower women, wants to celebrate women, whether you're Muslim or not. And I'm very proud that we've now sold over 3 million scarves since Duck has started. And Duck is known for a lot of collaborations. So we've collaborated with Disney, Barbie, Mattel, Sephora, Crazy Rich Asians, and more to come next year. So stay tuned for that. And the biggest highlight for Duck was when the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, wore the duck scarf. She wore the Malaysia duck for an APAC meeting, and that was just the highlight of our year.
Yeah, and I mean, it has to be said that Vivi herself has been an advocate for small businesses and successful women,
Aw.
and she's been using she's been using her platform particularly for a lot of outreach, and so I think this award, I think if it's for the company, it's also for Vivi herself because she's been driving a lot of these initiatives.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. Congratulations on the award.
Thank you.
On the business side, we've been very fortunate to be able to keep all our employees and their incomes unaffected.
Yeah.
From the start of the pandemic, we've shared with them the challenges that the company was going through, the health of our business, and the consequences if things turned for the worse. And so I believe that because we've been transparent with our team, that's also made them a lot more proactive in the company, and they've also taught themselves to become leaner and still as productive as ever.
Yeah, as hard as the year was, I think that it's a blessing in disguise as well, because we've learned a lot about our company, about our leadership, about ourselves, and with great leadership, we've made it through the year, alhamdulillah, and hopefully 2021 will be an amazing, a better year for not just us but for everyone out there.
Yeah, so once again, thank you so much to the Center for Global Muslim Life for awarding us with this award.
Thank you. We're so
It's an
honored.
honor. It's an honor to receive such a recognition, and we wish everybody a much happier, healthier, and prosperous year ahead.
Yes.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum. Bye, guys.
Alhamdulillah. Now from Malaysia, we're going to the deep green forests of the Pacific Northwest to interview Helwa. She's the author of Secrets of Divine Love, A Spiritual Journey into the Heart of Islam. It will be interviewed by my dear beloved friend Seyed Mahdi Qazwini. He has a master's degree in Islamic Studies and Leadership at Bayan Claremont. He's also an Islamic educator at IECOC. I think this will be one of the most beautiful talks that we have in our program. And now to you, Sayyid Mahdi.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى صحابته المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Sayyid Mahdi Qazwini. I am an Islamic educator located in Claremont, California, and it's my distinct honor to present this interview with Helwa, who is the author of Secrets of Divine Love, A Spiritual Journey into the Heart of Islam. As you all may know, the book has won the award for Best Devotional Text, and this is being presented by the Center for Global Muslim Life in the context of the Global Muslim Social and Spiritual Impact Awards. So we have with us Helwa, who is here today, who has agreed to share with us some of her time, some of her wisdom and knowledge, inshallah, just so we can gain further understanding of the purpose of this text, objectives, and how it has reached such a great spiritual reach, mashallah. So, Helwa, I know you've decided to remain anonymous, which is admirable, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue your reach. But if you can just give us a little bit of a glimpse into this text, what was the journey like? What did you have in mind when you first started this journey? What was What was the purpose? What were you trying to establish? Who were you trying to reach?
Assalamu alaikum, and yeah, thank you for taking the time to have this conversation with me. Said Mahdi is somebody I look up to, and his knowledge and his sincerity in the way that he approaches his faith and the way that he approaches people. So I feel really grateful to be having this conversation with you, and you're being very humble because you're like an integral part of my experience in creating this book and um, taking the time to listen to my questions and read some of what I wrote and help me make it better. And so I'm really grateful for that. And I think a lot of that journey for me in creating this book was around my own spiritual journey and my own seeking and the 1,001 questions of why that I had asked throughout my life and wanting to just collect something for myself, first of all, um, that I could give my friends or people who asked about Islam. And I could feel confident that, inshallah, that they would find something of benefit in it without feeling like I was imposing or being too preachy, because I've just learned so much from Buddhist texts and Christianity and the mystics of Judaism, and I just wanted my hope, my desire, my wish, my prayer was that I could be a part of creating something that would be the same for Islam in the English language. There's so many incredible texts as people who speak Arabic or Farsi or Urdu could say, but I felt like in English to have something hopefully that was like universal. Um, and so the journey in creating it was a jihad in a way. It was like a striving against the places where I felt incapable. And I still every day do feel incapable of being, even having a pseudonym of an anonymous finger pointing to this anonymous person here. I feel incapable of that, and I feel like in a way it's become a great reminder of my desperate need for God, for Allah to like keep helping me walk this path. And only with his help can things happen that are miraculous, because where this might just be a book for people, and I hope it serves them. For me, I'm aware of my incapabilities. I'm aware of the tools in my toolbox, and I can't make sense of how this book came about from what I have in my hand. So that space, that gap between my ability and what was created, I constantly see that as a reflection of God's mercy, and for that I'm grateful every day.
MashaAllah. I mean, well, it's a pleasure for me to just be part of that journey and really an honor. And I've learned so much. Um, I was looking for my copy of the book. And so it just so happened that my wife was traveling out of town. And out of all of the books she could have picked up, she picked up that one and took it with her. And it is very special and very close to us. Helwa, you mentioned this being a reflection of your own personal spiritual journey. And for as long as I've known you, one thing that has stood out is I would say your authenticity and your willingness to be vulnerable, and the fact that you embrace imperfections. And you've helped so many people in that regard. So many of the youth that I know that are connected to you have been empowered because of your ability to embrace imperfections and make something beautiful out of it. So my question is, spiritually, and there are people who are tuning in right now who are at all stages of their spiritual journey. Maybe some haven't even identified a spiritual journey or path. How important is it to embrace our vulnerabilities? How important is it to connect to God through our vulnerabilities, through our imperfections?
That's a great question. I often feel like in the spiritual journey, or really any journey, we avoid the door of neediness and vulnerability more than anything. We avoid it more than probably the coronavirus. I mean, I know people who would rather get corona than be vulnerable in a public setting. Like we really, really avoid that feeling. And I remember reading this. One mystic said that the doors of richness and blessing are crowded. Those doors are crowded on the path to God, but the door of neediness is pretty vacant. And so you'll have a easier chance, going straight to the divine presence through that door. And it was just, I felt like what that was saying was that when we are needy, we actually are in the perfect position to experience God as a samad, the self-sufficient. Like we are in the perfect position to experience God's greatness when we feel lowly. Like in our broken states, we're able to really taste something of God's perfection. And if we take this reality as being an opportunity to know God, to love, and to worship God, and that's our purpose, in our brokenness, we have an opportunity to get closer to manifesting that purpose on earth. And so suddenly, our weakest moments become, as Jesus said, what you boast in. I boast in my weakness, for in my weakness, I taste of your strength. And that's, I feel like it's so hard because our ego wants everything but that. And scholars throughout time have spoken to that nafs, that ego that wants lordship, that it is the opposing voice of neediness and surrender is, I am better, that I can do it. My way is the right way. It's the voice of the shaitan that says, based on outer appearances, decides what's better and what's worse, not knowing anything of the inward reality. And so when we say, I am needy, we're actually being catapulted to the highest realities through surrender because our Lord's generosity and mercy is experienced most notably when we're so important. And I think that I would say, just for me personally, like I have gained more from being incapable than I have of knowing and being capable. And I have gained so much more than being in a state of wonder and the unknown than I have from knowing something. And to this day, when I'm humbled by a scenario and I'm humbled by my own ignorance, I find that it opens a door inside of me to humility that that no amount of striving can reach. And I think that just the last thought on that is like, that's the real amazing thing about surrender is that you can't reach it by doing. You reach it by letting go of the doing. You reach it by kun, by be. And everything is. Suddenly everything is perfect as it was. And that surrender, it begins the journey. It's like the striving begins after that, really. Another way of saying that is that it's like surrendering is like plugging in like a motor. Like you can't start it until you plug in. And I feel like that's what surrender is. It's that plugging in. And then the journey begins.
That's so beautiful. That's amazing. I love the way that you describe that. And, especially in a society which promotes radical individualism, that word surrender has almost become like a dirty S word, right? So it's to embrace that and have that become your, I guess, your launching pad in your connection to God is so powerful. And it goes over so many people's heads, I think, in this day and age.
And it feels like important to say also is that surrender is not passive. It's not you surrender because you're unable or because you're afraid, or in the sense that you, when I say surrender, I mean an active surrender. I mean, when you say La ilaha illallah, when you say there is no God but God, that is a active declaration that there's nothing in existence and nothing can come into existence without Allah. And that everything you see is a contingent existence except that of Allah. That nothing could be and have form without His continual sustaining of it. That's not passive, that's an active, consistent declaration that you live in your existence. And surrender is active. It's saying every moment that I have a choice. I have a choice to turn to self-management, or I have a choice to turn to God. And I choose to turn to Allah and let Him guide me. But it doesn't mean I don't wake up every morning striving for things that I think are important and valuable. It's just that I don't try to own the outcome of those things. I don't try to project what I think would be best to happen. That I surrender the outcome to Allah and trust that He knows what's best. It's like the Yusuf's father thing, telling his brothers, enter the town from different gates. But then he says at the end, like, but I trust Allah and I know that what will happen will happen. That no matter what gate you enter, right, into the kingdom, you're going to reach the king. But that the Allah knows, but we still try our best, but that we surrender to that outcome. Yeah.
I love that. Not trying to own the outcome. That's very powerful. And yet we spend so much of our time trying to own the outcome that we don't even start the process in the first place.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Helwa, can I ask you, when you first started the journey of writing this book, did you envision that it would have this type of spiritual and social reach? Mashallah, based on what I understand, just off of these awards that are presented, there were about 90 countries represented in voting participation. And alhamdulillah, the book has had a global reach, people from around the world. Did you envision that? Did you plan that?
I definitely did not. I didn't know at all, actually. I had no real idea if a book like this would be received in this way. I knew that I had to do everything I could to get it to the person or the few people that I felt like prayed for something like this. And like in the introduction, it's a very odd paragraph, I've been told. But then which I talk about the prayer of a stranger that I felt at some point. And I'm not this like person who like feels people's prayers and hears all these things or something like that. It was just a feeling in my heart that I felt like someone prayed for this. Like, what is this push behind me that I can't understand? What is this passion inside of me that I can't put words to? What is this? All these people coming out of their way to help. What is this? And when it dawned on me that like it could just be one sincere prayer that somebody made, that Allah, like I felt in that teaching was like, I will use whoever I will, like to answer a sincere prayer of someone I love. And that just to be a part of that was so humbling that I could have spent like thousands of hours for one I don't even know and I never will probably meet. And then to know that the book came out and to get dozens of messages of people saying I was that person, feeling like that odd paragraph that my editor was like, you should remove this. This is very odd. that there are dozens of people, and that's enough for me. Even if it was one person that said that paragraph spoke to me, like I feel just a little bit more seen because of that. And I felt like satisfied. Like I remember feeling really satisfied that somebody felt seen. And And of course, I'm happy that people receive the book in different countries. But I think more than anything, it was like those people that it was meant for, um, that if they reached it, and continuing to make sure that those people, whoever that is, whoever made that prayer, like, has access to the book. I think it becomes more important to me than anything. Um, just because I felt like Allah plucked me out of this wilderness of being lost and gave me the blessing of guidance when I did nothing to deserve it. It's not like I did something for it. And I felt like I was freely given a gift. And then I felt like just like making sure that I act in the same way to someone else. And so for me, that was like, it became important. And my journey now is to continue to try my best that everybody who wants this book can receive it, even if it's in hard to reach places and hard to reach countries, um, and just learning about the publishing world and how people won't try for certain countries like Indonesia or Sri Lanka or the Philippines, and they won't try to get English books to those countries because it has no financial gain, or it's too difficult, or people will pirate copies. And I never knew like that this was like being in America and having access to every book I wanted and I want, that this is a reality some people live in. That for the economics of it, people don't try to get them. So I became like kind of passionate and obsessed about finding ways to getting this book to populations that don't normally get it. And so the success of it lends a hand for me to do that. And for that, I'm grateful. I think more than anything, probably.
MashaAllah, that's so profound. And the lesson I take from that is if you're on a journey, if you're doing good, whatever it is, whether it's writing, whether it's developing content, whether it's teaching, that you owe it to the person who's praying for you or who's praying for this content, even though they may not know who you are and they may not know exactly what they're praying for, to continue striving. Because if it, and that to me is very inspirational. It basically says, don't quit whatever you're doing. Because you don't know who's praying to get their hands on this type of content and this type of information. And I know personally, just because of our personal relationship, the people that I know personally whose lives are turning around because they're reading it from you. I've had, university professors who are chairs of religious studies programs reach out to me and ask me for a recommendation. Hey, do you recommend this book? And I think to myself, subhanallah, I mean, the caliber of people who are asking for recommendations on this book. And obviously I know you didn't have that specifically in mind. It was just to get it out to people who needed it the most, no matter where they are in the world.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So can I ask you, what's next? Is there a part 2? Is there a program that follows? Is there, I'm sure you've come up with some sort of plan. If you're able to share with us and just build up that anticipation and excitement for people who want more.
Sure. Well, I've been spending the past few months working on actually a prison course. I knew like right off the bat, like pretty much the week the book came out, I was like, how do I get into libraries and how do I get the book into prison? And those were like the two places like I wanted, like I felt like the prayer I had when the book came out was, Allah, just give me the opportunity to like get this book. I want it to be in the hands of people who are going through it, and I wanted to reach people that I felt like I saw a reflection of myself in when I was struggling. And I felt like so much blessing came to me. And so off the bat, I had this like prayer in my heart. And then a couple months ago, one of my friends who found Islam in prison, I messaged him And actually, a follower of my blog, just like she bought like 80 books, and she said, "I want you to give this to whoever you think needs it." And I thought, like, this is the beginning. Like, I'd love to do something with prison. And so when I talked to my friend, he said, like, yeah, let's make a course. And he works for prison outreach. And so we started to make a course based on the book that would be like questions and reflections based on the chapters people would read, specifically for the prison system. And so we already rolled that out, and it's really exciting just to know that, like, almost get to interact with the population so far away from my life experience in this way, and to have them like request copies for their wives on the outside, or um, and just the experience of like growth that I've been able to have myself, just interacting with this population and reading some of the responses to the questions that they've submitted and interacting in that way has been such a blessing. And it made me think maybe I should make like a study guide type content for everybody who's not in the system as well, just because it's been enriching for me just personally. I was like, wow, this is like really nice. Just the link outside was the organization I've been working with, and they did a wonderful job coming up with reflection questions. And so that's something I know that I want to do, just because I've done like book clubs with people, and it's been so awesome to interact with friend groups around the book. But then I thought, well, what if someone doesn't have a group of friends that are Muslim or can't do this? Like, is there a way that they could experience this without that? And I thought, so I've been working on that. But also, um, I've been working on a Quran typography book. That's the goal of it is just to give people like colorful ways of experiencing verses of the Quran on a daily basis. And my goal, even with Secrets of Divine Love, is like I always say, like the best compliment ever is when someone's like, "I was reading your book, and then I just felt like I should read the Quran." I'm like, "Yes, put my book down, put it on the shelf, like put the Quran, replace the Quran with it on your nightstand, like, because that's like there's no comparison." And so that's been like my favorite compliment ever. And so I want to find new ways to get people to turn back to the book, um, even if it's like in small doses. I think every thought and everything that made this book what it is those couple hundred Quran verses that are like framing the story through the book. Um, and so I just feel like those two projects are just two things that I've been working on, and really contemplating on how to be like feel a need in there somewhere. But really, I gotta say, like, one of my favorite things out of this book, I think, is that people are reading it and then asking me, like, what did it take to write a book? And Muslims, like, all over the world have asked me, how I have a message in my heart, or I have a mission I feel like I'm called to, like, towards, but I don't know where to start. And when they look at, like, somebody who, like, has a big institute and writes a book, they can't relate to that person. But then they look at me and they're like, "You're pretty much a nobody to the internet's eyes, so I could do that too. Like, maybe I can think and research and go learn and take classes." And so suddenly there's like this, and I think that that's really nice, because I'm hoping that the book that changes a generation, if this book could inspire somebody else to make that generation changing book, I would be so excited about that. And that's like another one of my prayers, is that it opens the doors for people who are holding back the brilliance that I know lives in them, um, to come out. I'm just like, I would love that, because I know we're limited in the English language with a lot of these types of books. So um, that's definitely one of my prayers. And I've been sitting with maybe making a type of class or course or something to serve people on getting their mission out, because I think it's really important, especially amongst Muslims. I think that we face a lot of barriers and walls within our own communities, within ourselves, and within the larger community. So, um, yeah, I guess that's pretty much what I've been thinking about.
That's beautiful, and I'm so excited for all of your projects, especially the illustrations of the Quran. I have a few of your pieces personally, and for those of you tuning in, Helwa, mashallah, is a wonderful illustrator, a wonderful poet. As you can tell just by reading the book, she has a way with words, and how she describes certain ideas and concepts and brings them to life, which is what I personally appreciate so much about the book. So let's switch gears a little bit. So this book won the award for best devotional text. So where do you see, or do you see a space in the future for Muslim women educators, becoming more involved in the space of devotion? You've traveled around the world, you've met with many scholars, male and female. How's that space going to change in the next decade?
That's a great question. I feel like there's definitely a big door that's open right now for women scholars. I've sat with a few incredibly brilliant women teachers, and the way they teach is different. I've sat with like husband and wife teams before. Very interesting to see how they hold space differently, how they support each other, and the roles they play there. I think the door is really open, and I feel like women are stepping out to share, to unveil and unlock the mercy and the softness and gentleness of the Quran. I feel like we've, in recent years more than ever, it's been strongly preached the justice elements, which are true. But I feel like now there's a wave coming of the mercy elements of the Quran to balance it out. And I'm hoping that somewhere in there we'll find this equilibrium. And I found with women scholars, they have a way of touching something that's subtle in a different way. And I don't think it's about gender. I think it's just about life experience. It's about becoming a mother and something that happens in that process. It's being a daughter. It's about being a sister. It's about the positions that, Khadija played as a woman. She was a strong woman. She was a businesswoman, but she was the wife of the Prophet, peace be upon him. She, the positions that Zainab played. She was a woman. She was feminine, but she had to play a very strong position in her life, witnessing atrocities that were difficult to witness. There's a mix of strength and softness that I think that women bring, and I think the door is open. And I feel like one of the things that has been such a gift for me is that the male scholars I came across left the door open for me to ask, to experience, and following every appropriate measure that the Quran and Islam has placed, and held me with like sacredness and appropriateness as they help me understand things that maybe women didn't have access to, or at least I didn't have access to. So I feel like the role that male scholars have played continues to be important in keeping a door open, knowing that over half the population are women, and one of the main complaints is they don't have a space to learn. And so I think the male scholars who are open and allow female students to learn and keep the door open for them is so important as that ally. Because I think that we would have more women teachers, especially to address like female issues. I think there can be unique sometimes. And I think that door is open. I've seen some incredible women scholars, and I've been actually excited about one of the things I've been excited about is finding ways to bring their work to a wider audience. So that's something I've been thinking about, because there's definitely some women that are unbelievable, like blow me away every time I talk to them for even 10 minutes. So I'd like to bring those teachings to a bigger and wider audience. Um, so inshallah, in the future, we will see more of those doors open, and we could be allies to those people and to celebrate their work, inshallah.
That's beautiful. You know, one of the things I came across recently was this concept of being a strong man versus a man of strength, and being a strong woman versus a woman of strength. And I think in today's world, that idea of being a strong woman is perpetuated, but it's different than being a woman of strength. And the role models that you cited, Lady Khadija, Lady Zainab, peace be upon them both, were more women of strength rather than, you know, strong women. And you're a pioneer in that regard. I admire you for, mashallah, your strength, your courage, your bravery. Again, you've inspired so many women just in the circle of women that I've seen, helping them break through barriers and realize their value and their self-worth. And so inshallah you will, and you are a pioneer in that regard and a door opener, inshallah.
Inshallah, alhamdulillah. Thank you.
So I wanted to switch, and maybe you can offer us just some practical advice in terms of, you know, 2020 has been crazy, to say the least. And obviously most people have stayed at home more, spent more time indoors than they have before. And people are looking for ways to keep their minds occupied, keep their heart occupied, keep their spirit occupied. And since this is a book that includes a lot of practical advice on devotion, what's one or two things that we can focus on individually to strengthen our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I know the book, if I'm not mistaken, was released the end of last year, correct? The end of 2019?
It was February of 2020.
February 2020. So right before everything blew off. And so what I'm trying to ask is, in terms of the devotional practices, has anything changed? I mean, would you recommend anything different? What advice do you have for us? What practical advice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like one of the things that in the book, a lot of it is in a sense returning to your body in a way. You know, whether you're doing dhikr or which is like remembrance of God, or muraqabah, like observing the day that you had. It's returning to your body, returning to your life, returning in reflection. And I find that one of the things that has happened as a result of 2020 is that people sort of are escaping reality because it's too painful to look at, maybe too painful to feel. And so I feel like one of the things that has been helpful to me is that really finding grounding. So going outside in a safe place, say not with a lot of people, could just be outside your house where you could see the sky, and really feeling gravity gently press you into the earth, and feeling that you're a body, that there's a force of creation pressing against you, and to really just be present with the way that the sun touches your skin, to return to your body, to feel what it feels like to be human, to be alive. And as you feel yourself grounding, to imagine that your feet are growing roots into the earth, and that these roots are just reaching deep in the earth and reaching out and just grounding you into this earth. And as you feel the sun, to just imagine yourself as this tree, with your hands wide, open in prayer, but open like leaves, receiving the light from above. And so as you stand here, as the human being, as the bridge between heaven and earth, You stand here as a human body, grounded in the earth, taking from the nutrients of the earth like a tree, and your hands reached out, receiving the light from above. And so you're reaching in and from above, in and from above, and you stand here like this tree as often as you need to remind yourself that you're human, that you live in a body, that you're this tree rooted in this earth, receiving light from the heavens, that this is your relationship with the divine, that you're from the earth, but that you receive light, and light helps you grow. And so when you feel overwhelmed, when you feel like you can't control anything, like everything is out of your control, that you return to your body and that you remember that you are a spirit, that you're a breath of God held in this mortal embrace of clay, and that you could root into this earth, and that you could open your hands in prayer like leaves and receive light. And that when that light comes in, it transforms you, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what you have or haven't done. That when you connect to Allah, that when you ask of Him, He answers. He says, call upon me, I'll answer. He says, I chose you for myself. He says, don't fear, don't grieve. I'm with you. I'm with you. He says, I am with you wherever you are. And so remembering that, no matter what's happening in the outside world, remembering that God is with you every step of the way. And doing that through these, like, maybe using this visual guidance. And alongside that, doing dhikr, calling upon God, calling upon Allah. And I like to say, like, I'll say the second thing is when you say Allah, Allah, when you say that word, when you observe how that tongue, al, rises up and hits the roof of your mouth, al, and that's you rising towards the heavens, asking, connecting, seeking, before you can Allah, before you can bring it back down, the tongue falls back down and expires out into space. You call to Allah, you ask of Him, you feel from Him, from the sky, from Him, and then you disperse and give. That when you walk, especially in this time, that you're not giving from the limited well of your being, but from that space. So you al, as the tongue rises to the roof, then drops down, la, get from the heavens and give to the earth. And then that's our calling, is to be in continual connection with the divine. And that if we're not in connection, it's like pulling the, turning off the water faucet. You know, the water is there. It's always there. You just have to turn it on. And the way that we turn that water on is by asking and seeking God. And so using Allah and saying dhikr, again, with that visualization, being aware of how the body moves when it says God. And so I think those are maybe two slightly different ways of looking at it, aside from things that are mentioned in the book, that I would recommend, especially for this time. And for people to be aware that the feelings that they feel, that those are just vehicles to a deeper unknown need within them. And that our emotions are not bad or good, but that there are these maps that turn us to this inner treasure inside of us, of this inner wisdom of a way in which God's speaking to us. And so to just the anger and the frustration and the sadness we feel, to not waste time in judgment of them, but to, when we identify them, to pause and to ask Allah to show us the deeper wisdom beneath our reactions, and to highlight the places inside of us that need to be purified and polished so that we can be a reflection, inshallah, of His love and mercy for all people without discrimination.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful, wonderful advice. And it's so crazy how we take, just the smallest things, such as the pronunciation, lafz al-jalala, pronouncing the name of God, Allah, so lightly, and just the layers that you add to it, the layers of meaning. I'm moved, as you can tell.
Alhamdulillah.
Are there any final words that you want to share with people who are hearing your message today? I mean, you have so much abundance to give, mashallah. Anything that you want to leave us with? Any final thoughts?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think I would just say that you matter, that Allah sees you, that He hears you, that He knows the pain that you experience, that He knows the depth of it, that He hears the prayers you don't make, that He understands the feelings you don't understand, that every step of the way that He's with you. And when the entire world is asleep and has forgotten their own existence, that Allah is aware of your existence and that He loves you more than you could imagine, and that He's waiting for you to return to Him so that you could experience His love that He's always been pouring upon you anyways. And so my deep prayer for anyone listening is that they're reminded how special they are, how out of infinite possibilities God chose to create you, that He chose the color of your eyes, the color of your skin, that He chose the way that your hands would look, the way that your voice would sound, that everything about you is intentional, that nothing about you is an accident, and that He, the moment, like one Jewish mystic said, the moment that God created you was the moment He decided the world would be incomplete without you. And to remember that, and to remember the role and the sacred role that you play and that every other person in this world plays, and how special we are to Allah, and to hold each other with dignity and honor, inshallah.
Thank you so much. What an important message. Thank you. I'm truly inspired every time I get to hear from you. Every time we have, our little conversations and exchanges, I really am inspired, and I thank you for being just a beacon of love and light and authenticity and vulnerability. I really, really do appreciate that about you, Helwa, and I'm very excited to see your reach and your influence continue, and for God to continue to make miracles happen through your work, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure, and I'm so grateful to have you in my life, and it's such a gift. So I'm praying for you and your family every day, inshallah. Ameen.
Thank you. Likewise. And again, I just wanted to congratulate you on receiving this award, and just on behalf of all the participants, thank you again for sharing your wisdom with us, and we look forward to learning so much more from you, inshallah, in the near future. But with that, my friends, participants, we bid you farewell. We hope the best for you, inshallah. This has been beneficial. And this is Seyed Mahdi Qazwini, and it's been an honor for me to have this conversation with Helwa. For those of you who haven't checked out the book, definitely check it out. I believe you also have Quran quotes daily on Instagram. So for those of you who want to follow Helwa, please go ahead and do that there. You're seeing on the screen right now the book, how you can order it. And yeah, with that, I mean, is there anything else that we should know that I've left out?
That's perfect on my end. Thank you so much. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you, everyone. And take care, everybody. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How many here believe there's a supreme being, believe there's a God? How many believe there's some power that made the sun, the moon, the stars? How many believe that this stuff didn't just come out here? Somebody wiser than us made it. How many believe there's a God?
The spiritual legacy of Muhammad is love. I mean, it's what he's done all of his life. and that is the message of Islam, is love. And he knows this, I know he knows this, that of the tremendous work that Bayan is doing in his honor, and I know he would be immensely pleased at this.
My name is Fatin Saifullah. I'm from Las Vegas. I've been a resident Imam of Masjid Al-Sabur for the last 18 years, and I've been fortunate this year to receive a scholarship, the Muhammad Ali Scholarship.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Corey Majid, and I am a Muhammad Ali Scholar at Bayan Islamic Graduate School.
My name is Hamza Abdul Malik. I am the Imam of the Midtown Mosque in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm originally from one of the first communities that was started by Imam Shaykh in New Haven, Connecticut. And I really appreciate Muhammad Ali Scholarship because it's continuing the legacy of spiritual and social leadership that Muhammad Ali left.
I'm from Masjid Ibadallah in the middle of South Central Los Angeles. You see, I grew up around individuals who have done 22 years in prison, 25 years in prison. Bayan has given me an opportunity when I'm able to stand before you all and say that I'm a graduate. I graduated with my master's. It's not just me graduating. It wasn't just me in the classrooms. It was me in my community.
Bayan affords me access to a demographic that can sustain the kind of conversation I think we need to have in the Muslim community. I don't think we need to sit around talking to each other. We need to be talking to the people we think about in terms of what affects the reality of Islam in America. So if I'm a Black American, I need to express some of my thoughts and feelings to some of the immigrant community and vice versa. And we need to do that in a space where the conversation, hopefully, is mutually enriching. And this is part of the whole point of Bayan.
So, I'm gonna dedicate my life to using my name and popularity, helping charities, helping people, uniting people. We need somebody in the world to help us make peace.
We zijn hier omdat het Kunstmuseum mij heeft gevraagd om een modern kalligrafiestuk te maken op een object wat geïnspireerd was eigenlijk door het maand Ramadan. We zijn toen gekomen op het object van een schaal en de reden daarvan was dat het eigenlijk best wel voor de hand liggend was voor het maand zelf, het maand van het vasten. En natuurlijk rond dezelfde tijd hadden we ook te maken met corona en het fenomeen van hamsteren. Ik was wel heel erg geïnspireerd door wat ik zag in het kunstmuseum en ik probeer wel meerdere inspiraties ineen te zetten. Dus ik denk het object waar we op hebben geschilderd en de kleuren wat we gebruiken, legt ook de tijdsgeest vast waar we in werken.
Om inspiratie op te doen en meer te leren over de historie van kalligrafie op schalen uit de islamitische cultuur, heeft Anissa me uitgenodigd naar het depot van het Kunstmuseum, waar we samen een aantal stukken uit de collectie hebben bekeken.
Het eerste waar ik echt heel erg benieuwd naar ben is, hoe oud zijn deze kommen en waar komen ze vandaan?
Alle drie komen ze uit Iran. De middelste is de oudste, die is uit de 10e eeuw. En deze uit de 12e, deze uit eind 12e, begin 13e eeuw.
En wie waren de eigenaren van deze kommen?
Dergelijke kommen die we hier zien, en zeker deze categorie, ook gezien de kwaliteit van de kommen en de kalligrafie op de kommen, dat we te maken hebben met hoge middenklasse. Keramiekwerk met een decoratie wat we lusterwerk noemen. Techniek van de versier van keramiek, dat metaalbewerking, dus eigenlijk objecten die van metaal zijn gemaakt, imiteren. Het zijn geen kommen die voor een vorst of voor een adellijke familie per se zijn vervaardigd. Niet dat ze het niet konden veroorloven natuurlijk,
Ja.
Maar die kon zich kommen van nog rijkere materiaal of oorlog, zoals metaal. Je hebt kommen gehad die in opdracht werden gemaakt. En er waren kommen die voor de vrije markt werden vervaardigd.
En dan specifiek deze 2 kommen, wat staat hier?
Dus op deze 2 kommen zijn religieuze zegenwensen te vinden. En op deze kom is een passage uit een gedicht te vinden. Op deze kom uit Nishapur zien we dus de kalligrafie geschreven op de bodem. En daar staat Man Sabara Qadira. Man Sabara Qadira zou je losjes kunnen vertalen naar wie langs volhoudt, zal ook iets kunnen bereiken.
Ja, ik zie echt kunstwerk voor me, maar kochten mensen dit ook als kunstobjecten thuis of aten ze ook hieruit?
Het minimum wat in dergelijke kommen werd geschonken, in deze, is water. Er werd dan misschien iets gereciteerd uit de Koran of een passage uit de overleveringen van de profeet. En met de zegening die al op de kom staat, dronk je dat op.
Ik verdiep me vaak eigenlijk in het woord of het vers of een zin of een quote. Wie heeft gezegd, waarom werd het gezegd, in welke context? Om dan echt een feeling te krijgen met hetgene wat ik aan het schrijven ben. Dan eigenlijk heel erg te reflecteren op vandaag de dag. Dus ik duik vooral de boeken in of op Wikipedia, gewoon online even gewoon de bronnen raadplegen. Ik vraag mensen die daar misschien meer kennis van hebben. Van wanneer werd dit gezegd en in welke context. En zodra ik dat heb, dan pas kan ik beginnen met het schetsen en kijken hoe het zou passen. En dan bij een kom is het natuurlijk zo dat je te maken hebt met een begin en een eind. Je hebt een ronde vorm en je moet ergens beginnen, maar het moet ook heel mooi eindigen. Dus dan meet je het af en dan wordt het soms een beetje een wiskundig verhaal. Het moet passen, er moet balans, er moet harmonie in zijn. Dus dat schetsproces dat neemt soms net zoveel tijd in als het onderzoeken.
Met mijn plan ben ik naar Anuar van de Vrije School Den Haag gegaan, die voor mij een schaal heeft gecreëerd die ik ga gebruiken voor mijn kalligrafie.
Kom verder. Nou, dit is het boetseerlokaal, 3D-lokaal van de Vrije School. En hier gaan wij aan het werk vandaag. Hier ga je je kalligrafie op werken. Dit is dus na de biscuitstook. En dan gaat het straks de oven in. Dus met gietklei heb ik het in een mal gegoten. En dan weer terug. En dan heb ik het een tijdje laten staan. Dan krimpt de schaal. En dan haal ik het er dus uit. Dan heb ik het in de oven gedaan. Ja, ik denk dat die grote het mooiste zijn.
Als ik met een potlood eroverheen zou gaan, dat ging er weer af, hè? Gaf je aan?
Ja, de potloodlijnen verdwijnen met de glazuurstook wat we gaan doen.
Ja. Eigenlijk vooral het hamsteren gepaard met het maand van vasten. Deed me best wel reflecteren toen ik de legenschappen zag dat iedereen aan zichzelf dacht. Iedereen neemt extra pakken pasta, rijst mee, totdat er eigenlijk niks meer over was. En het maand Ramadan herinnert jou eigenlijk aan het concept van delen. Dus wat mij vooral deed beseffen was de woorden van de profeet, vrede zij met hem, waar hij spreekt over dat het eten van 1 genoeg is voor 2 en het eten van 2 genoeg is voor 4. Het eten van 4 genoeg is voor 8. Dus wanneer ik mensen zie inslaan, waar is dat stukje gebleven van aan elkaar denken en het delen van wat je hebt en weten dat hetgene wat je hebt, dat genoeg is. En ik vond dat heel toepasselijk om dat op een kom of een schaal neer te zetten. Ter herinnering van een maand Ramadan, het fenomeen van corona en het hamsteren vooral. En gezien hoe in de geschiedenis eigenlijk ook deze kommen waren bedoeld als herinnering voor de gast die daaruit at of dronk, dacht ik van dit is wel een toepasselijke herinnering voor vandaag de dag. Het begint eigenlijk wel bij de traditie, dus de traditionele Arabische kalligrafie. Maar er zitten ook sterke invloeden in van het hip-hopcultuur en dan met name graffiti. Nou, ze hebben me ook wel gewoon uitgedaagd. Het is sowieso heel erg fijn dat zij het vertrouwen in jou hebben. Dat je dat samen met hun iets van kan maken. En dat ze je ook natuurlijk de vrijheid geven om dat te onderzoeken. En alle middelen om dat te laten slagen.
Na een week ben ik teruggegaan om de schaal uit de oven te halen en het eindresultaat met eigen ogen te zien.
Die glans is echt van dat kopergout.
Ja.
Echt heel goed gelukt.
Super.
En het blauw. Delfts blauw.
Het is geïnspireerd door Delfts blauw inderdaad.
Hoe mooi, je hebt echt het dunne en het dikke erin.
Ja.
En het randje is geworden zoals je gedacht had?
Ik was verbaasd, maar positief verbaasd dat je dat toch erop hebt kunnen krijgen.
Dag Qasim.
Salam.
Salam. Nou, dit is
Daar
hem dus.
staat hij, ja.
Het eindresultaat. Oh, prachtig. Ja, ik zie echt dat je je hebt laten inspireren door de kommen uit de collectie van het museum. Maar weer je eigen draai eraan hebt gegeven.
Ja,
waardoor...
en mijn stijl en een beetje van deze tijd natuurlijk.
Precies.
Ook ander werk in het museum
ja,
te zien
fantastisch.
is.
Wat voor tekst heb je nu verwerkt?
Overlevering spreekt over het feit dat voedsel voor 1 genoeg is voor 2. En het voedsel voor 2 genoeg is voor 4. En het voedsel voor 4 genoeg is voor 8.
Ja.
En dat leek me... Het is een tijdloze boodschap, maar het was heel kenmerkend op dat moment.
Ik vind de keuze ook van de overlevering vind ik echt heel bijzonder. Ik had het niet verwacht. Omdat het delen van eten in heel veel islamitische landen, het eten vanuit 1 schaal, vanuit 1 kom, tot de dag van vandaag eigenlijk nog steeds wordt gedaan. Ta'amul wahidi yakfi al-ithnaini wa ta'amul ithnaini yakfi al-arba'a wa ta'amul arba'a yakfi al-thamaniya.
Next up, we have a talk by Mustafa Dustin Craun on building the future of global Muslim life in the 21st century. Mustafa is the founder of the Center for Global Muslim Life, as well as the founder for Beyond Border Studios. Mustafa is a dear friend of mine. We go way back to my undergraduate days at Zaytuna College. This will be the 4th major conference this year that he's put together. He's also curated this global program. Mustafa is a person of high spirit and thought. He's constantly thinking about how to connect the global Muslim community and provide a platform for them to be heard. And now, without further ado, my dear beloved Mustafa Craun.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings to you all. I pray that you're well. You know, I come to you today from Southern California with a heavy heart and a lot of sadness, but at the same time, great hope. This has been one of the most difficult years of any of our lives, especially those of us who are a bit younger. This past week, we lost my beloved grandmother, Shirley Craun. So I didn't know whether or not I was going to be able to do this, but alhamdulillah, I really wanted to pull through for you all. And a month before that, we lost my other grandmother, Joan Barthel. May Allah bless them and give them Jannah Firdaus, inshallah. But at the same time, just last month, we were also blessed with a beautiful, alhamdulillah, new daughter. And so these are our lives, right? And these are especially our lives in these times where we're inside, we're much more reflective on our state, and everything happening around us seems to be so heightened. This is our bodily existence, right, on this earth, that all lies between these two realities of our birth and our death. After this year of endless upheaval that has touched all of our world and each of our hearts, and so important that we remember the promise of the words in the Quran that with hardship comes ease. We pray for God's breezes of mercy and ease to bring an end to our collective suffering. Ameen. It's important that we reflect deeply on these verses and these times from Surah Al-Sharh, these ayats about the opening of the heart. None of us would be here without that act, that original act where the Prophet ﷺ had his heart opened by the angel Gabriel and purified by Allah, right? This, for each of us, is a lifelong and metaphysical reality that we must go through, that if we were to take this faith and this path seriously, that cleansing of our hearts and the transformation of our hearts and our lives from one of hardship to one of ease. Those of us who converted to Islam, myself now almost 20 years into this journey, we see this state of our hearts go from that of grave hardship and poison to one of light, guidance, and ease over the years during this spiritual marathon called life. Of course, with tafsir of Quran, there are layers of meaning. There's the literal meaning, the context in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, when and where the verses were revealed, and the deeper spiritual meaning of each verse that you find in some tafsirs, rare tafsirs, like the great Moroccan 19th century Seyed Ibn Ajiba. Then, of course, the verses have the very specific meaning for each of us in our own lives, in our own hearts, a reality that can also change over the years as new meanings are peeled back for us. As a convert, these verses touch me in such a deep way. They are also verses with a deep secret prescribed for opening of the heart. As one example of this, with the advice on what to read over a child when they are in the womb, it is recommended from Habib Omar bin Hafiz to have the father read these verses over the child in the 7th month of the pregnancy 152 times. Surah Al-Sharh, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Have we not, O Prophet, opened your heart for you with our guidance and lifted from you the burden which had washed down your back and raised for you your own renown? So indeed, with hardship comes ease. Indeed, with hardship comes ease. So whenever you become free from obligation, then stand in prayer and turn to your Lord alone in hope. I think also with these verses about the openings in our world, we can expect, inshallah, when this pandemic is over, in this promise from our Lord. As we are in quarantine, each of us should think about what we are building for the future of our world. Of course, different parts of the world are in more strict quarantines than others. Ours has mostly gone on where we're just going out for food and, groceries and things like that for 9 months now. And if we can think of that far ahead, if we can't think that far ahead of what as we're each in quarantine, each of us should think about what we're building for the future of our world. And if we can't think that far ahead with all the death and pain surrounding us in these times, then we can at the very least reflect on what we can prepare for the future that is in our grave. These last 9 months have made people question their entire existence. Nothing looks nearly as invincible in our world as all the illusions of grandeur that preceded this time. And we can expect that when we come out of this, inshallah, soon, that so many people could turn to this deen, could turn to us looking for answers, and inshallah, we're prepared to have them. Of course, humans today, we like to imagine ourselves as the most technologically advanced peoples in the history of this earth, but look what can happen to our world, even with all this technology, something we can absolutely not control, that brings the entire planet suddenly to its knees, the entire economy, entire countries, and we don't even know what the end of this will be. Sure, we have hacked many earthly things, the ability to communicate across the world in an instant when it used to take months, the ability to access the world's libraries from almost anywhere on the planet. But these are degrees. There are degrees to this idea of progress and advancement. We are advanced in westernized sciences, but in the world of the spiritual sciences of existence, we are regressed and disconnected people. Ours is, of course, a living tradition, that of Islam, passed down from one teacher to the next. And as we think about the future of our world, of course, we must think, what does it mean to truly live as Muslims through the worldview, the vision, and promise of Islam? The secrets of past civilizations are found in some books, in some people who still walk this earth, and others were destroyed, like in the conquest of Mexico, where priests followed the conquistadors and destroyed some of the greatest libraries in the history of this world in Teotihuacan. One of my favorite places to travel on this earth is in what is today southern Mexico on the Yucatan Peninsula, an entire landmass that only emerged when the asteroid that destroyed the planets, the extinction of dinosaurs, struck the earth in the Gulf of Mexico. Chichen Itza, this beautiful sacred precinct there in these lands, this great pyramid of the Mayan people, a place where you enter and you do not wear shoes, a space whose sacred geometry reminds me of Mecca. These are people, the Mayan people, that hacked time and space and spiritual dimensions. These are people that are known as some of the greatest masters of time in human existence, how well they know calendar, how perfect their calendar is. There's even a point there at Chichen Itza where there is a man in an engraving on one of the walls that if you were to take a description of the Prophet ﷺ and look at this engraving, you would think that perhaps that is him. How did they know him? This place, subhanAllah, right? The secrets of our world that we don't truly understand, and something that is interesting to reflect on, as the Americas are the great frontier of dawah in our world and where Islam is spreading rapidly in the Spanish language. On a much different spiritual pilgrimage a few years back, I went and visited the Wali Songo in Java, these saints that brought Islam to the Nusantara, to learn from their spiritual genius, and to the teacher of the Wali Songo buried just off the coast of Malacca on Palau Besar, Sultan Arifin. The spiritual genius of the Wali Songo, as we found on this trip with our beloved teacher, Sheikh Muhammad al-Jilani, was their ability to be bridges in their times using the cultural realities of the people. Ever since this trip, I've reflected on what would this look like in our own times. As a filmmaker, how can we create opportunities for filmmaking rooted in spirituality? We know how clear it is that this is one of the means of communication of our times. That's why it's so important that we have spiritually rooted filmmakers, film producers, film financiers who can create true beauty and spiritual art form in this media that involves that very difficult task and reality of the manipulation of light. Ideas I'll come back to towards the end of this talk. We have to understand, if we are to think about the future, how our world was constructed. This world based on desires today of wealth, luxury, being an influencer and YouTube star, and then with their mansions continuing these lifestyle cycles of desires. At the core of this was an idea that somehow this reality of endless desires is invincible. Yet we've so clearly seen that notion destroyed in front of all of our eyes, as this world has reflected from a collective cataclysm with a global pandemic, just like our world seems to suffer around every 100 years. The United States, my home country, and the root of so many of these desires, has been laid bare for what it truly is. Those of us who live here have seen it with our eyes, a land of Hollywood smoke and mirrors, this idea of this land of opportunity, when for so many, the reality of daily racialized oppression is laid bare in front of the world to see. People would always ask me about the US in my travels, and I would try to explain it in a way that they could fully understand. This reality where living in one of the wealthiest places in the world, California, also means living with one of the largest populations of homeless people in our planet. Hundreds of thousands of long-term homeless. And this was before the pandemic, let alone now, where we literally know homeless people's names who we've lived by for years. What does this mean, right? That this reality has existed for so long. COVID is obviously another indicator of this reality of my country and the state of our political leadership. There are nearly the same amount of people living in California as live in Malaysia. Malaysia has had 16,000 cases of COVID to date, and California has had more than 18,000 deaths and nearly 1 million cases, with what is potentially the worst part of the outbreak so far emerging right now. Today, of course, our world is much less ideological and largely driven by these desires if we are to compare to what the 20th century was like. For Muslims in the 21st century, we have seen 2 decades of global Islamophobia and governments that rule in the context of this supposed end of history. This neoliberal capital dominance that was created over decades by corporations and government rulers, and which exists mostly unquestioned now, even despite the pandemic, showing the great inequality created by these economic systems around the world. Systems where individuals, investors, and corporations become wealthy, while the social contract of the nation state and basic care therein are destroyed, and people have absolutely nowhere to turn. Those of us observing the world closely understand that if the 19th century was the European century, and if the 20th century was the American century, then in so many ways, the 21st century is already the Asian century as the United States continues its rapid decline. But of course, this is also a world today where power is more split into factions than it was before, of elites, as we have seen so explicitly during the Trump administration. From politicians to narco-style underworld networks that exist around the world to corporations. Ours is a world manufactured in backdealing and corruption, where Malaysia's own example, making global headlines with the now imprisoned and defamed Najib Abdul Razak and his wife Roshma, whose crimes, as bad as they were, are likely a drop in the bucket compared to the corruption by neo-fascist governments like Donald Trump's, like Mohammed bin Salman's in Saudi Arabia, and like Bolsonaro's Brazil. We've gone from being people who are ideologically driven to being driven by our own nafs, where everyone imagines they can be king of the world. A world driven by manufactured narratives, algorithms, and to put it frankly, endless political propaganda fed by the global monoculture of Netflix and now American and Chinese desires of upper middle class wealth. The agents of this now global power that is destroying the very planet we inhabit is one that can be very difficult to pinpoint exactly. In my 20s, I would walk around the markets throughout the world and you would see t-shirts of Malcolm X and Che Guevara and Frida Kahlo, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, leaders who stood for collective justice for all people. Today, you walk around these same markets and you find Avengers t-shirts, Superman, Batman, imagined individuals who stand for themselves, usually tragic or fallen heroes, not even with the same narrative arc of something like Star Wars and the hero's journey that more closely resembles the ethical and virtue-oriented storytelling of Islamic history. There is a saying that living in California is like living in the future of the United States. And as true as I've found that to be, I would add to that statement that living in Asia is living even further into our world's future, which I have been blessed to do living in Malaysia for several years. If you drive into Kuala Lumpur at night, you come across one of the world's truly stunning man-made structures, the Petronas Towers, the tallest building in the world until 2004. These twin skyscrapers lit up at night rise out of the city and into the sky like a temple to our modern world that looks like a 1,000-foot still mirror of the ancient Angkor Wat temple in Cambodia. As you get closer to the building, you see in its details that each tower is shaped in a common symbol of Islamic architecture, as an 8-pointed star known as the Rub al-Hizb. This building is surprising in its beauty, that even after living in KL for over a year, I still would stare at it every time I came into the city. At the ground level, as you drive into the city on the highway, instead of a regular sign marking the city limits, you find in most places in the world, you instead pass a prayer written in Arabic with the KL city crest that reads, Ya Allah, Rahmatullah, Kuala Lumpur. Oh God, bless and have mercy on Kuala Lumpur. Ameen. In the call and response prayer style of Muslims around the world, many of us answer with full sincerity, Ameen, Amen, in the Christian tradition. Recently, they replaced these signs as the city was preparing to host the ASEAN Games with a new slogan defining KL as a city of contrast and diversity. While the design motifs of the city take on a mixture of classical Islamic, Malay, Chinese, Indian, and contemporary styles, Kuala Lumpur is fully unique in its standing as the most diverse Muslim majority city in the world. Southeast Asia as a whole is a unique meeting point of Hindu, Buddhist, Chinese, Islamic, and Western civilizations mixed with local indigenous beliefs and traditions. This is a region of the world where these civilizations have come together as if they were each smaller rivers meeting as they enter the ocean of humanity. KL as a city is still so young in its permanent development that most Malaysians still have ties to other parts of the country. The kampungs are villages where their parents grew up, and each year during the Chinese New Year and Hari Raya, the Eid celebrations after Ramadan, the city almost completely empties out as everyone goes to their villages to celebrate with their families. Malaysia, like Kuala Lumpur, is a young country in the nation-state sense, but ancient as a place of trade and confluence of peoples, part of the larger archipelago of islands which stretch from the Malay Peninsula across the islands of what is today known as Indonesia, all the way to the southern Philippines, an area called the Nusantara, whose people have shared beliefs, customs, shared lineage, and shared religious beliefs that when taken together make up the largest population of Muslims in the world. Yet, what does the world know of these populations? Very little, if anything, unfortunately, right? It was during one of those holidays when the city emptied out a few years ago, living in the midst of that beautiful, diverse, thriving Muslim metropolis, that I first conceptualized the Center for Global Muslim Life. It was during this time in KL in 2017 and 2018 that I started reflecting with a group of thinkers, artists, and community leaders on how little we actually know about the diversity of Muslim life around the world. We know about our set of crises, the wars, and Islamophobia, but what do we know about the leaders in our community building the collective future of the world's largest and most diverse faith? What do we know about Muslims making a social and spiritual impact around our world? What do we know about diverse narratives about Muslims being produced around the world, the diverse startups growing around the world to serve Muslim communities? We asked the question, what would it look like to create a center that is future-oriented and that creates spaces for cultural producers? What would it look like to create something truly visionary and move away from the constant reactionary thinking that our community has been stuck in for the last 20 years? Today, global Muslim communities are known primarily through the singular narrative produced through media and cultural production of terrorism, war, Islamophobia, and the global refugee crisis, with media and academic institution focusing on Arab Muslims, who make up only 15 to 20% of global Muslim populations. Nearly 70% of the world's Muslims live in Asia and Africa. Alhamdulillah, I've also been blessed to live in Ghana and in Morocco and spend time in Egypt and spend time in Africa and see the incredible diverse Muslim populations in Africa as well. But yet these populations are paid little attention. The 70% of the world's Muslims. Muslims are unique as a multi-civilizational community with large diasporas of peoples all around the world, with large populations in Southeast Asia, South Asia, throughout North, East, and West Africa, with large populations across the Middle East and Eastern Europe, and with large minority populations in Europe, East Asia, and growing throughout the Americas, not just in the United States and Canada. Over the next 50 years, our world will see unprecedented change, with more than 70% of humanity is expected to live in urban areas as global power will continue to shift to Asia. Technology will play an even more heavily increasing role in our world and daily lives, and climate change will impact our world in ways that we cannot fully predict. The landscape of religious communities will also change rapidly over the coming half century, as global Muslim populations will grow from an expected population, what is right now around 2 billion people, to over 3 billion by 2027, making Islam the largest religion in the world for the first time, and going from 1/4 of humanity to 1/3 of humanity. These brothers and sisters are the next 50 years of our time here on earth. What will we do with it? Muslims have created unique global networks that, despite great differences across communities, have historically shown strong solidarities, most explicitly represented in the life and legacy of our beloved Malcolm X, his global vision of Islam, what Sohail Dolatzai calls the Muslim International. This international collective of global Muslim life is a call to global solidarity amongst Muslims and with peoples throughout the world who face similar forms of oppression. As Dolatzai clearly states, Malcolm forced and compelled the Muslim International to be a broad and inclusive space that understands the overlapping histories and interconnected struggles that not only shape the modern world, but that also shape the conscience of the Muslim International as a site for radical justice and equality. Today, Muslim communities, of course, face oppression, but yet we're building resistances both within Muslim majority countries as well as throughout the US, throughout the Americas, in Europe, and in Australia and New Zealand. I believe this period of oppression, brothers and sisters, is inshallah coming to an end, and we're about to see a great transformation in our world. This reality of overlapping countries where Muslim make up large minority diasporic populations and global spaces of social impact, political and artistic resistance is an emerging reality that has been grossly understudied within the Muslim community or academic studies at large. Islamic studies departments in Western academia have never fully distanced themselves from their colonial roots within area studies and have primarily focused on lands that US and European military power were interested in. As we launched the Center for Global Muslim Life in April of 2020, this year after the pandemic began, we focused on a unique set of research on emergency response research to the global COVID-19 crisis, research focused on Muslim wellness, the 2020 election in the United States, emerging narrative infrastructure and building that narrative infrastructure through our digital media academy within Muslim communities, global Muslim film, and we will close the year with a conference focused on global Muslim tech and startup ecosystems. The Center for Global Muslim Life is a future-oriented media production lab, meaning that we produce our own media and content to create these transformative narratives ourselves, myself as a filmmaker and with a great network of media producers. We're also a research center that wants to go deeper in these areas I've mentioned. We're also a cultural incubator where we're taking ideas and we're incubating them and showing them across cultural realities. We're especially doing this right now through conferences that bring in diverse people from throughout different sectors based on the issues we're working on around the world to gain really important insights as to the state of our world right now. And finally, we're also a cultural preservation hub because this is one of the most underfunded things with Muslims around the world right now is preserving our culture. Things like the audio recordings of the Quran from throughout history. Who's preserving those things on vinyl, on even digital audio, right? Things like studying the masajid around the world that are being destroyed. Of course, we heard so much about Hagia Sophia, but we hear nothing of the hundreds of masajids around the world that have been destroyed, like in China as an example, and replaced with bars. Our goal really is to create cutting-edge conversations across our diverse Muslim communities. The Center for Global Muslim Life builds connections between a diverse set of faith leaders, media producers, researchers, cultural strategists, artists, technologists, community organizers, and policymakers from throughout the United States and from around the world on key issues impacting Muslim communities. And we're really focused on these diverse set of issues around the world that are being understudied. With this work, we have coined this world. The CGML is focused on the unique set of issues facing the world's largest and most diverse religious community on the planet, while asking key questions about the role Muslims are playing in creating global social and spiritual impact, diverse narratives, and unique contributions to the world around us. In our work, there is no social impact without the spiritual core, our hearts, being impacted with the light of Allah to change our world based on our own Islamic worldview. What we've done so far with this center is we've really focused on talking about the future and cutting edge work happening around the world in each of these areas. Our model really is to create convenings for this networked diasporic Muslim communities to then produce research based on the findings from these convenings and then create high quality media to reach wider audiences with our findings. So with the launch of our center, we launched with this idea of the diaspora of our hearts. And we have a beautiful film that I want to play for you real quick to show you some of more in depth what we're talking about.
We've come from so many places on this earth, but our lives share a common destiny as we walk together. In a time of crisis or in a time of peace, this is a story of 8 billion beating hearts. We share this one fragile planet, the air we breathe, the land we walk on, and the oceans we swim in. Imagine borders that surround us, some more fortified than others. Borders for many of us define our lives today. For global capital and those with the right passports, borders are easy. For the global masses, these borders tell us where we can and cannot go. For the world's 2 billion Muslims, 1 out of every 4 people on this earth, our lives are interconnected by the diaspora of our hearts, of our families, and a spiritual lineage that stretches back 14 centuries. But we are only told stories that put us in boxes to police our identities. What if the full story was told about our faith, about our lives, about our cultures, the story of our love for humanity, and our stories as protectors of the world? This is for the future builders, the dreamers, those who want to escape from the futility of generations past destroying our shared world. Media has been built to divide us. We ask, what if it was built to connect? This is a manifesto written across screens. We need you. Beyond languages, beyond cultures, beyond faiths, beyond all barriers and borders, we need each other. This is for all of us.
Yeah, so that was the Diaspora of Hearts and this idea of building this work as a global manifesto for Muslims, right? From that conference, we created our Global Muslim Film Festival where we featured 60 films from around the world. We took advantage of what COVID created and the ability to create these convenings and to truly bring in people from all over the world. So we had nearly 100 different speakers on that program from all around the world, and we're doing a set of research that talks about what global Muslim film markets truly mean, what they could mean for the future of distribution of global Muslim film. And we had a 3-hour session on Ertugrul from Turkey and how TRT has grown to become the second largest broadcaster in the world after the BBC, as a perfect example of these emerging markets, right? We had our 2020 Ramadan Digital Media Awards, respecting the incredible work that Muslim communities produced, right? Only months after we all had gone on lockdown, and what was produced in those months to really, really incredible content. Then we had this Hajj of the Hearts program with our partners at LaunchGood, where we focused on what Hajj meant at a time when, of course, we couldn't go on Hajj. We were a distribution partner with our partners at Raise Karma, where we had this incredible arts festival from with artists from around the world, like Ras Muhammad from Indonesia, many others, where we were able to bring together arts to really focus on spiritual transformation and healing in these difficult times. We just finished our conference on building an American Muslim political agenda for 2021, talking about the 2020 election. We had a nearly 3-hour long broadcast the night of the 2020 election. And now we hope that we know that either way, we know the outcome now is that we're going to have a new president in the United States, inshallah. But either way, we know that as Muslim communities, we have a lot of organizing to do. We launched our Digital Media Academy that you can check out on our website, globalmuslimlife.com, where we are training people around the world in digital media strategies. We have scholarships available, because we understand that in this time where everyone has gone online, there's a lot of our organizations that may not know how to do that work, right? They may not know how to do digital work at a high level. They may not know how to build a brand, how to tell their story online. And so we've created a 5-week course where people come in, and at the beginning of the course, they may not know much. And at the end of the course, they're able to pitch their product for their company or for their nonprofit or whatever it may be. It's a really beautiful conference. And now to close the year, we're getting ready for this Global Muslim Tech and Startup Conference that we're having with partners from around the world, talking about Muslims in tech, ranging from corporations in Silicon Valley to Muslims building startups focused on Muslim populations like Noor Kids and Muzmatch and all these different Muslim startups around the world that have really blown up. How Hijab, all the different ones in Malaysia, all these different hijab companies, etc. Like Nailofa, all kinds of different companies. The Global Muslim, and then finally with that, we're having the Global Muslim Social and Spiritual Impact Awards program, where we're giving awards to the best films of the year, best books, best artists, all these different things, where we really feel as a community, we need to recognize more our beauty and our love for what it is we're doing. And then into 2021, we're looking at global Muslim wellness, global Muslim cities and building an alliance of Muslim mayors from around the world. But of course, this year it started for me. Before COVID, we've been engaged in this work here at a really grassroots level. And I never want to forget that, even though we're online now, right? Where we created this work around the border mosque with our partners at the border church, where we're at the US-Mexico border. And this work was really, really foundationally important. And we know how transformative it can be, because it's for these families who've been separated by US-Mexico immigration policies, including Muslim families who've been separated by the Muslim ban. And so you can check out our film, A Prayer Beyond Borders, on our website and on YouTube. And we also made this really amazing short film with Rashida Tlaib, where she visited with us to the border, right? We know that I still have a ways to go. I think we're almost at our time within the talk. But ultimately, to close, I wanted to come back to Malaysia. We have to center, because if I'm talking about the future again, we have to talk about the world that we want to build and how we do it. We have to understand our true ideology and our faith, who we are as people, and how to understand the world that's been created around us and how to create transformation. Ultimately, to close and to come back to Malaysia, we have to center and more deeply understand the work of our beloved teacher, Sayyid Muhammad Naqib al-Atas, in his body of work about the worldview of Islam and his book, Islam and Secularism. Sayyid Naqib al-Atas is one of the true geniuses of this ummah, a polymath who is an artist, a designer, a philosopher, a religious thinker, an architect, having designed the stunning ISTAT campus in Kuala Lumpur. He is sadly, in my opinion, not respected enough within Malaysia, although his books are read at Islamic universities today around the world, including at our own American Muslim Center of Islamic Learning, Zaytuna College. This while also coming from a great lineage of Indonesian ulama or awliya, Sayyid Naqib's work is groundbreaking while also being generations in the making. And it is absolutely foundational for us to understand in building a true future for ourselves as Muslims in the 21st century. If we don't understand the worldview of Islam and what it is, then we won't understand how easily we can be Muslims living our faith, not through our own worldview, but oftentimes through the worldview of Westernization, or perhaps in future, the Chinese worldview. Not to say we can't take from what's good in these civilizational realities of a Western civilization, the Chinese civilization, but we must live our lives through our own worldview, being spiritually rooted in our own faith. Western man today has placed itself at the center of existence. This false God stands on what W.E.B. Du Bois called the clay feet of the white man as God. This false God is a form of shirk that places a white supremacist worldview at the center of existence, something I go in depth in my work you can find online titled Decolonizing the Heart, and in my forthcoming book, White Benevolent Innocence, Race, Whiteness, and the Genocidal Mentality of Colonial Modernity. Of course, we can learn about our worldview from classic works of Aqidah, but Sayyid Naqib is able to explain what this worldview is while simultaneously looking at what it is not in comparison to secular colonial modernity. The clearest articulation of this, in my opinion, is found in the article, The Worldview of Islam, an overview as part of the proceedings at ISTAC in 1994, collected in the book Islam and the Challenge of Modernity. I just want to read a couple of quick quotes from this important book by Sayyid Naqib. Islam does not concede to the dichotomy of the sacred and the profane. The worldview of Islam encompasses both al-dunya and al-akhirah, in which the dunya aspect must be related in a profound and inseparable way to the akhirah aspect, and in which the akhirah aspect has ultimately and final significance. The dunya aspect is seen as a preparation for the akhirah aspect, We don't have one without the other, right? Everything in Islam is ultimately focused on the akhirah aspect without thereby implying any attitude of neglect, of being unmindful of the dunya aspect. Reality is not what is often defined in modern Arabic dictionaries as waqia, whose use, particularly in its grammatical form waqi, is now in vogue. Reality, of course, as we know who've studied the spiritual tradition, is haqiqa, which significantly is now seldom used due to the preoccupation with waqia, which only points to factual occurrences. A factual occurrence is only one aspect in many of haqiqa, whose ambit encompasses all of reality. Moreover, a factual occurrence may be an actualization of something false, i.e. batil, whereas reality is the actualization always of something true, i.e. haq. What is meant by the worldview, according to the perspective of Islam, is then the vision of reality and truth that appears before our mind's eye, revealing what existence is all about. For it is the world of existence in its totality that Islam is projecting. Thus, by worldview, we must mean Riyat al-Islam li al-Wujud, the Islamic vision of reality and truth, which is a metaphysical survey of the visible as well as the invisible worlds, including the perspective of life as a whole, is not a worldview that is formed merely by the gathering together of various cultural objects, values, and phenomena into artificial coherence, nor is it one that is formed gradually through a historical process of philosophical speculation and scientific discovery, which must of necessity be left vague and open-ended for future change and alteration in line with paradigms that change in correspondence with changing circumstances. It is not a worldview that undergoes a dialectical process of transformation repeated through the ages, no matter how many times the Islamophobes try to tell us that. From theses to antithesis, then synthesis, with elements of each of these stages in the process being assimilated into the other, such as a worldview based upon a system of thought that was originally God-centered, then gradually became God-world-centered, and is now world-centered, and perhaps shifting again to form a new thesis in the dialectical process, what perhaps would be technologically centered, especially as we move to all these forms of artificial intelligence in our world. To continue, Islam is not a form of culture, and its system of thought projecting its vision of reality and truth and the system of value derived from it are not merely derived from cultural and philosophical elements aided by science, but one whose original source is revelation, confirmed by religion, affirmed by intellectual and intuitive principles, our aql and our qalb, our heart. Islam ascribes to itself the truth of being a truly revealed religion, perfected from the very beginning, requiring no historical explanation and evaluation in terms of the place it occupied and the role it played within a process of development. All the essentials of the religion, the name, the faith and practice, the rituals, the creed, and system of belief were given by revelation and interpreted and demonstrated by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his words and model actions, not from cultural tradition, which necessarily must flow in the stream of history. Historicism, the religion of Islam was conscious of its own identity from the time of revelation. It was born, indeed, mature. Hold on, a few more. The process, this is so important that we understand this thing, right? And I know this may be boring to watch, but this is how important Sayyid Naqib is, that I want to read this to you in Malaysia, right? The process of accusation of knowledge is not called education unless the knowledge that is acquired includes moral purpose that activates in the one who acquires it with what I call adab. This is so important. Adab refers to the right action that springs from self-discipline founded upon knowledge whose source is wisdom. For the sake of convenience, I shall translate adab simply as right action. There is an intrinsic connection between meaning and knowledge. I define meaning as the recognition of the place of anything in a system, which occurs when the relation of a thing has with others in the system becomes clarified and understood. Place refers to right or proper place in the system, and system here refers to the Quranic conceptual system as formulated into a worldview by tradition and articulated by religion. Knowledge is the arrival of meaning in the soul, or the soul's arrival at meaning, this lifelong journey. And this is the recognition of the proper places of things in the order of creation, such that it leads to the recognition of the proper place of God in the order of being and existence. But knowledge as such does not become an education unless the recognition of proper places is actualized by acknowledgement, that is, by confirmation and affirmation in the self of the reality and truth of what is recognized. Acknowledgement necessitates action that is proper to recognize. Adab, or right action, consists of such acknowledgement. Education then is the absorption of adab in the self, the actualization of adab in individual selves composing society as a collective reflects the condition of justice. Justice itself is a reflection of wisdom, which is the light that is lit from the lamp of prophecy that enables the recipient to discover the right and proper place for a thing or a being to be. The condition of being in the proper place is what I have called justice. And adab is that cognitive action by which we actualize the condition of being in the proper place. So adab, in the sense I am defining here, is also a reflection of wisdom. And with respect to society, adab is the just order within it. Adab, concisely defined, is the spectacle of justice as it is reflected by wisdom. The disintegration of adab, which is the effect of the corruption of knowledge happening throughout the world and amongst the Muslim, creates the situation whereby false leaders in all spheres of life emerge. For it not only implies the corruption of knowledge, but it also means the loss of the capacity and ability to recognize and acknowledge true leaders. Islam teaches that the seat of knowledge in man, in the human, is a spiritual substance, variously referred to in the Quran as the heart, qalb, or in his soul, or self, nafs, or his intellect, aql, or his spirit, ruh. It has many names because of its accidental modes of states. Thus, when it is involved in intellection and apprehension, it is called intellect. When it governs the body, it is called soul or self. When it is engaged in receiving intuitive illumination, it is called heart. And when it reverts to its own world of abstract entities, it is called spirit. Indeed, it is in reality always engaged in manifesting itself in all its modes. And finally, on how we create a tranquil soul, which is key in creating our future world as Muslims, because we know that our future as Muslims isn't going to be brought to the world through politics. Our future and our impact in the world has to do with our character. It has to do with akhlaq. It has to do with our states. It has to do with who we are spiritually. And anything, if this time has taught us, this time where we are in this Helwa, enforced Helwa or retreat that Allah has placed us in the midst of this pandemic, is that we must transform ourselves if we want to be anything like our predecessors, like we talked about the Wali Sango, to reach those saintly states. of the awliya is not going to be easy work. It's not going to be work that we're going to get by making dhikr of our cell phones. It's going to be work made by making dhikr of Allah. Right? That this condition refers to the state of the tranquil soul, al-nafs al-mutma'inna mentioned earlier. Tumanina describes the calm, restful condition of the heart, which we said in an aspect of the self. It is freedom from worry resulting from doubt, freedom from disquietude. It is inward peace, satisfaction, joy, happiness, which comes about when the soul or self is submissive to God. Being submissive to God is what is known as freedom, for it is a return to one's true nature, acknowledged by man's pre-existent soul when it has sealed its covenant with God. Being submissive to God involves remembrance in the heart of God's presence. Who, Allah, who. And remembering means recollection, and remembrance means recollection of God. Recognition and acknowledgement of his lordship, rububiyah. This being submissive to God is the soul's reconciliation with God, which causes to arise in the soul the consciousness of safety, security, freedom from corruption and failure, the consciousness of peace called Islam. These activities of the soul or the self imply a priori condition of consciousness in the soul of the truth that comes from guidance. The consciousness is that of certainty, yaqeen of the truth. Yaqeen is the contrary of doubt, shak, and conjecture, zan. It is the removal of doubt, that which drives the majority of people in this world is doubt about our times and our age and politics and everything, and conjecture from the heart and the verification of the truth in the past, present, and future. This is the true blessing we have, brothers and sisters, is knowing the truth. The Quran mentions 3 degrees of certainty in knowledge. That which is derived by inference, whether deductive or inductive, ilm al-yaqeen, the baseline of scientific knowledge. But then Western knowledge doesn't go beyond this. It's only to that one layer. That which is derived by observation or direct vision, ayn al-yaqeen, and that which is derived by direct experience. What Imam al-Ghazali told us we had to have to know Allah, haq al-yaqeen. These degrees of certain knowledge pertain to truth, whether manifest or hidden, empirical or transcendental, and the certain knowledge of what is hidden has the same force of certainty as that of what is visible. These degrees of certainty also pertain to the heart and refers to iman or faith, right? So one of the projects we hope to work on in the coming years is a documentary about the ideas and vision, true transformative global vision of Sayyid Naqib al-Atas. As someone who has been deeply involved in political movements in the United States, after living through the last 4 years of this cult of white supremacist celebrity, I can tell you our politics as Muslims is not identity politics. It's not what we have to offer the world. What we have to offer the world is our akhlaq, our adab, as a civilizational reality, our spiritual practice, and the ability to truly know Allah. This is what Sayyid Naqib is telling us. This is our prayer and our vision for this center, based so foundationally on this idea of this worldview of the previous generations of scholars and ulama and spiritual luminaries who paved the road for us. This is our prayer in building this new world over the next 50 years, that Allah uses us as agents of guidance, transformation, and renewal of our world. Ameen, ameen, ameen. Assalamu alaikum. May Allah bless you all. Peace and blessings. Yeah, thank you all for tuning in tonight. Thank you again to our sponsors, LaunchGood, Gold Studio, and Bayan Islamic Graduate School. We will be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. in Sydney, and 11 a.m. in Kuala Lumpur. Assalamu alaikum, peace and blessings. If you would like to give to the Center for Global Muslim Life, you can donate at this link. Just scan the QR code and you can give. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.